Part 48. Super Seminary Angel Binghua. Author, Shifeng Si Wang. Chapter 489. When the angel warriors who broke into the surface of the Black Star adjusted the optical capture algorithm of their eyes, the originally dark environment could no longer hinder them. However, the dense barrage that came immediately forced the angel warriors to disperse in order to break through this extremely dense fire blockade. On the surface tens of kilometers away, there are countless silver-gray metal fortresses, mainly orbital defense turrets hundreds of meters high. At this moment, countless twin-mounted turrets on these fortresses are pouring their ammunition into the sky. The red bullet chains that were almost connected in a straight line were like long knives cutting through the night, constantly cutting through the airborne Cybermen and angels. As the red fireball exploded, ear-splitting explosions continued to sound. Some angel warriors were using their hands to resist the shaking shields to prevent themselves from being disrupted by the cannonballs fired from the surface. Shape. As for the second-generation angel warriors who were the captains of each team, they held flaming swords and swung downwards to avoid the bullet chains that were constantly being swept away, intending to land first and prepare to destroy these fire power points with flaming bombardment. Although the impact part under the Cyberman airdrop pod that landed with it was thick enough, it could not withstand the continuous bombardment of these shells. In a moment, it was carried huge kinetic energy and the exploding shells tore open the armor below, starting from scratch. The airdrop cabin was penetrated to the feet. As the airdrop pod fell apart, the Cyberman warriors inside, except for the guy who was unlucky enough to be torn to pieces by the cannonballs that penetrated the airdrop pod from under his feet, all opened the jets on their backs to slow down their falling speed and prevent them from being thrown to pieces. Scattered parts. As they got closer and closer to the surface, the angels, who had already accelerated their dive speed, finally reached the sky above these metal fortresses. Dense flaming sword energy and war spears that turned into red meteors continued to fall from the sky. Countless metal turrets that were spitting out fire snakes were either cut in half by the flaming sword energy and exploded, or were penetrated by the war spears that turned on the melt mode. The internal structure becomes paralyzed and misfires. As the angel warriors attacked, the metal fortresses had to switch their firepower in an attempt to expel the angel warriors who were constantly attacking above them, but with little success. The advanced AI in charge of each metal fortress continuously modified the locking system of the forts in real time according to the attack mode of the air angels, and organized multiple forts into groups to suppress and block the activity space of the angel warriors. In fact, this method is also very effective for ordinary angel warriors. Even if there is a shield on the front, shells from the side and other directions can still cause considerable trauma to ordinary angel warriors. Many angel warriors had to withdraw from the battlefield after staying in the fire net of the metal fortress for a few minutes and landed in a safer area to recover from their physical injuries. In addition to a small number of small metal fortresses that only had orbital attack capabilities and some near fireproof capabilities, the angels who were the first to break through also encountered a large-scale fortress that covered several kilometers and had numerous near-fireproof arrays on its surface. In addition to the above-mentioned defensive firepower, this large metal fortress also has an underground parking plant that can spit out a large number of interceptors. It also has several high-power particle cannons that can vaporize a hill in one blow. Correspondingly, the high-ranking angels in command also concentrated a large number of elite angels to attack such large fortresses. As the covering angel warriors attracted the attention of the surface defense facilities on the Black Star, the Cybermen's losses gradually began to decrease, and at this moment they had less than 2 minutes left before a successful landing. Cannonballs with red tails crisscrossed in the air. An angel warrior kept moving left and right to dodge the incoming cannonballs while approaching a metal fort that was constantly spitting out fire. As the distance increased, more and more cannonballs hit the shield in the angel warrior's hand. The terrifying kinetic energy and the high temperature caused by the high-energy material inside the shells when they exploded made the surface of the shield in the angel's hand pitted and inlaid with numerous ins and outs. Less everted metal pieces. When the distance was enough, the angel warrior suddenly removed the shield that covered his figure, and with his already raised right hand, he threw the war spear with the red light on the surface downwards, like a long trailing flame. The meteor slammed into the fort that was firing into the sky, leaving a fist-sized flaming red hole in the armor on its surface. But the angel warrior's action of throwing the war spear also caused a loophole in her defense. Several other nearby turrets grouped by the metal fortress AI immediately turned their barrels and spit out red flames. I saw a line of artillery shells attacking from several directions at the same time, and then the angel warrior was swallowed up by the explosion of fire. But before the fire faded, the angel warrior rushed out of it and avoided the subsequent attacks. The incoming artillery fire strangled her, but her body was already covered in charred black, and her originally flowing golden hair was parted in circles. Her right arm hung by her side, and a trace of blood dripped down the arm guard, showing that she was obviously injured. Taking advantage of his illness to kill him, it was obvious that the nearby smart turret also understood this truth. It turned the turret, and the cannonballs in a line drew a long arc in the air and threw them towards the injured angel warrior. Looking around at the several cannonballs that were swept in a line, the angel warrior immediately made a decision in his heart. Although he was reluctant to leave his family who was still in Merlo heaven, it was now time to fight for his life. He immediately incited his wings to advance instead of retreating, trying to withstand the incoming artillery fire. At least one smart fort must be destroyed before falling. But suddenly two flaming sword energy more than 3 meters long flew past the angel warrior's back, melting all the cannonballs in their path, and finally leaving a deep gash on the outer armor of the metal fortress. Fiery red slash marks. The next moment, the female angel, who was originally planning to die with those metal forts, felt a tough arm wrap around her waist. The next moment, the surrounding environment flew back, and she was soon out of the dense firepower of the metal fortress. What immediately greeted the female angel warrior was a scolding. Then the high-ranking angel who rescued her said softly, "You are a noble angel warrior. Life is not as cheap as a machine. Only justice in the world is worth all our efforts. Remember, don't be brave unless necessary." Immediately afterwards, the high-ranking angel left and flew towards the metal fortress like a hedgehog. After a few seconds, a dazzling light suddenly appeared from the metal fortress, followed by a loud muffled sound, and then a huge cloud of fire rose up, turning the night red. Under the horrific explosion, part of the several-kilometer-long metal fortress collapsed, revealing its complex internal mechanical structure. The ordinary angel warriors who had been constantly weakening the metal fortress's counter-attack ability could not turn a blind eye when they saw such a big hole in the fortress's defense, and they all converged on the damaged area. Then, centering on the damaged area, it swept towards the surrounding area at low altitude, weakening the remaining smart turrets on the surface of the metal fortress. The results were very gratifying. In this storming landing battle on the Black Star, with the help of high-level angels, a large number of orbital defense weapons and closed defense facilities on the surface were destroyed, and the angels finally ushered in the dawn of victory. Super soldiers are the key to reversing this war. The reason why super soldiers are called super soldiers is because they can do things that ordinary soldiers and warriors cannot do. The high-ranking angels who are closest to the top super warriors of the god of war in the Kamigawa combat system, that is, the existence of demigods in the Kamigawa system, undoubtedly have destructive power that matches their status. After a complex energy transfer and compression algorithm, coupled with the guidance of the internal weapon engine of the flaming sword, the attack intensity of a high-level angel with all his strength can be comparable to or surpass the main gun of a conventional large battleship. Due to the special environmental reasons of Wuxingxing covering the sky, the high-level angels entering the scene cannot easily control the ubiquitous stellar radiation and physical light energy in the universe. This is the reason why this raid is progressing so slowly. Otherwise, as long as Angel Ran gathers a certain number of high-level angels and elite angels, and uses flame bombing and sky blade judgment to clear the way, the surface of the black star can be blown into ruins. With the meteors trailing long fiery red tails hitting the ground with loud noises and flying dust, the Cybermen's airdrop army finally arrived on the surface after suffering countless casualties. As the closed airdrop hatch opened, tall saber-heavy armed legionnaires about 2 meters tall, whose bodies had been mechanically modified, poured out. Among them were several officers who were bulkier than their surrounding companions. As the officers who commanded the team, the chapter leader who was responsible for commanding the combat troops in this area immediately issued the latest instructions to the soldiers under his command through the communication network. The first team set up a local combat network centered on the airdrop pod area, the second team set up basic defense facilities in the front, and the third team built an air defense fire position. Be careful not to accidentally injure those guys in the sky. The 4 teams spread out to explore the surrounding terrain, alerting themselves to enemies that might appear at any time. After giving the above command, the cyber chapter leader unfolded his right arm, revealing the forearm-thick muzzle inside. Then the expanded part shrank and fit around the barrel, and an orange light representing high heat lit up in the gap. All the little boys of the war group, please keep your spirits up. I don't want to come down from the sky after all the hardships, only to be buried in the mouths of those little birds. The little birds in this chapter leader's mouth are the interceptors that sniped and intercepted them in the atmosphere. Even with the cover of angels, many Cybermen airdrop pods were still destroyed, which made this chapter leader feel filled with suffocation, submission and anger. After the command system was successfully established, the war gears of cyber civilization began to slowly turn, and the Cybermen warriors pouring out of each drop pod found the jobs they needed to be responsible for. The heavily armored cyber warriors responsible for the reconnaissance and vigilance had the jet nozzles on their backs, allowing them to fly at low altitudes, ignoring the obstacles of some steep terrain, and spread to the surrounding area of dozens of kilometers in just a moment. Scanning the surrounding terrain. Connect to local area shared network. Upload surrounding electronic map data. The Cybermen warriors responsible for building defensive positions are dismantling the shell of the airdrop pod, building steel bunkers and rapid-fire turrets for fire support outside the wartime headquarters. Slightly behind the defensive position, some Cybermen are installing some laser interceptors and miniature anti-aircraft missile nests. Looking down from above, this area seems to be accelerating time. Every minute, every second there will be new metal creations on the ground, and the airdrop pods that landed in this area will soon be dismantled. At the same time, hundreds of angel warriors also came to the sky above these Cybermen, some began to circle and stand by, and some were cruising in all directions. In a metal facility deep inside the Black Star, a metal sphere with countless thick wires connected to its surface, like an eye, stands here. It is the intelligent AI responsible for controlling the entire war in the Black Star, and is named Wu Hengzi. Name. Its prototype is a subroutine separated from the resurrected World Eater God. It has no personality and only cold logical calculation capabilities. At this moment, in the statistics of this intelligent AI Wu Heng, there are 2 places in the entire Wu star that are eye-catching. Red and orange. The orange area is the area where the Angel United Fleet launched an attack, and the red area is where the affiliated civilizations under the Angels landed. Allocate 3% of the computing power to the 54,699 area. Start 054699, 054, 8700, 054, 8800, 05355500, Area Automatic Combat Humanoid, Automatic Ground Combat Mechanical Unit. No 005, 4800, 005, 4799, the Fortress deploys 50% automatic interceptors, 50% automatic annihilators, and 50% automatic air combat fortresses. As Wu Heng, the intelligent AI that controls the entire Black Star, turned its attention to Area 54,699 where the Cybermen and Angels broke into, the combat pressure faced by the Angels increased sharply. The metal fortresses that were originally spread out to attack the surface of Area 054699 only had to face the automatic defense turrets of the fortress itself and harassment from internal interceptors. But after the intelligent AI Wu Hong unlocked and put the combat units on standby in various surrounding areas and under the surface of Area 054699 into the battlefield, the Angel's troops suddenly became insufficient. Interceptor planes began to appear in the sky, mixed with many slender triangular-shaped aircraft equipped with medium-sized particle weapons, and small warships that were tens of meters long and equipped with large particle weapons and plasma shields. At the same time, the ground in each area began to shake, and it separated to both sides like an open door. Countless people with skin with some black meridians poured out. Yes, they were human beings, and they were out-and-out Wuhan people. Among them were old people and adults. There were all kinds of people and clothes, but there were no children. They move stiffly, hold large firearms, and walk as if they were programmed in advance. They are all the same regardless of whether they are men, women, old, or young. The sound of dull footsteps could be heard from the ground that was partially open to both sides. A frame nearly 2 feet high, with gun barrels and missile nests on both sides of its back, an automatic machine that looked like a spider crawled out quickly. Occasionally, they will appear to be as high as 5 or 6 meters, walking on 4 mechanical legs with a crawler structure inside. The surface is covered with heavy armor, and rotating turret mechanical units are hung on the sides and back. Obviously, as the Angels and Cybermen arrived on the surface, Wu Hong, the intelligent AI on Wuxingxing, also chose to change the battlefield from pure air-to-air-ground three-dimensional combat. Undoubtedly, this was very unfriendly to the Angels and Cybermen who had just completed their landing and had not yet established a foothold on the Black Star. Super Seminary Angel Binghua. Author, Shifeng Si Wang. Chapter 490. In the temporary defensive position established by the Cybermen, chapter leader Berglane, who is the commander of thousands of nearby cyber-heavy armed warriors, is observing the terrain of the electronic map projected in front of him. Because he had received the terrain data of the Black Star sent by Angel in advance, Berglane already had a plan in mind, and the area he chose was pretty good, with a towering mountain range behind it, so he also planned it when setting up his position. Most of the troops were deployed in the northeast and south. At this moment, there was a sound of air explosion high in the sky above the head, and the next moment a female angel with a full armor and stomach slowly landed not far from Berglane. Seeing this, Berglane immediately put away the projected three-dimensional map, strode over, and spoke loudly at the same time. "Respected Lord Angel, what are your orders?" When the angel who suddenly arrived heard someone speaking, he turned around and gave instructions directly without being polite. "I need an open space big enough." Berglane raised his hand in salute and replied. "We are already prepared. Please come with me." In the center of an open space specially set aside in the center of Cyber Camp, a high-level angel warrior holding a flaming sword was standing there quietly. As for Berglane, who was leading the way, he had retreated several meters away. The high-ranking angel raised her hand, with an unknown expression on her face covered by the visor. In her mind, her genetic engine was making contact with the sky blade on the battlefield on the other side of the Black Star, establishing a data transmission channel with Tianren. The Angel Weapons Depot has been connected and the material transportation channel is being constructed. The estimated time is 5 minutes. As 5 minutes approached, the air in front of the Angel Warrior suddenly became rippled, and then countless red lines emerged in the air and quickly intertwined into the shape of a double-pointed triangular prism. Then a flash of white light spread out to the surroundings, and a double-pointed triangular prism with countless tiny sacred words engraved on its surface appeared in the originally empty air. After doing all this, the high-ranking angel breathed a sigh of relief, relaxed slightly, turned around and said to Berglane, who was not far away, "This is a micro-wormhole anchor used to transport materials over long distances. You must protect it and prevent it from being damaged. I understand, Lord Angel, if you want to harm God's creation, you must step over the bodies of our cyber warriors. Hearing this, the high-ranking angel nodded with satisfaction, then spread his wings and jumped up into the sky. Just when Berglane was secretly envious of the angel's unique flying ability, the double-pointed triangular prism shook violently, and the sacred language on the surface emitted a trace of orange light. The next moment, 4 golden suspended robots emerged from the void. They were Angel's engineering construction robots. These Tianjian series engineering robots were seen spreading out towards the surroundings, emitting blue light from their heads, and began to use a kind of cybernetic force. Using methods never seen before, matter began to be printed out of thin air. Strictly speaking, this is also within the category of micro-wormhole material transport technology. Items built in advance are transported using special material transport technology, which is only suitable for mechanical creation. Berglane looked at this miraculous scene. Although he knew that this was just the product of Angel's powerful technology, he could not help but feel a sense of awe in his heart. Boom! The sudden explosion interrupted Berglane's thoughts. As soon as the command communication channel was opened, defensive position officers from all directions began to anxiously report that they had encountered an attack. The enemy was a mixed infantry mechanical force. Berglane's heart sank when he heard this, but as expected, the enemy's ground troops had already been in his calculations. Each team will hold their positions on the spot. Even if they fight to the last person, they will have to defend it for me. We represent the face of cyber civilization in the known universe. In the defensive position outside the temporary cyber base, the deafening sound of guns and artillery is continuous. Every cyber heavy-armed soldier is a war machine, and the ammunition fired by the heavy-armed Gauss rifle in his hand has extremely strong kinetic energy and penetrating. The temporarily erected defensive fort is a Gauss rapid-fire cannon with a caliber of 60 mm. It can blast a large crater into the ground with one blow, and its specially loaded carbon steel explosive bombs can reduce a 10-meter-wide area to living things. Restricted area. Facing the endless influx of humanoid creatures and intelligent machines inside from the end of the horizon in the dark night, the Cybermen did not consider the consumption of ammunition at all, and opened fire with all their strength without waiting for the maximum killing distance to be reached. The unique gunshots and cannon sounds of Gauss weapons continuously. On the other side, heading towards the Cybermen position, the beings identified as automatic combat humanoids in the intelligent AI Wuhan command sequence began to run forward, with no trace of fear on their stiff faces, facing the incoming bullet rain. Charge straight away. There was an ear-splitting roar, and the fire of the explosion tore the Autobots with a radius of nearly 20 meters into pieces. Before the blood and internal organs could splash, they were burned to ashes by the rising high-temperature flames, and the shockwave even burned their body parts. Thrown high into the air. But for the tens of thousands of automated dolls, this amount of damage is nothing at all, and it can't make any splash in the spread-out automated dolls. When the distance between the two sides narrowed to 1,000 meters, the charging Autodolls were greeted by a hail of bullets from Gauss rifles. The Autodolls at the front of the queue had their backs splattered with blood and flesh, and varying numbers of holes appeared on their chests. If the arm was hit and broken by a bullet on the spot. What makes the attacking cyber soldiers look at them is that even if their bodies are broken into two parts, these automatic humanoids are still crawling towards their own defensive positions. When the distance narrowed to about 600 meters, these automatic humanoids finally slowed down and raised the guns in their hands. The next moment, overwhelming particle beams were fired at the Cybermen's defense positions, and the Cybermen began to appear. There were sporadic casualties. Clutton is a cyber-heavy warrior who made his mark on the planet Leakin of the cyber civilization. He underwent brain electronic chip implantation surgery at the age of 5. He joined the army at the age of 20 and received organ enhancement and limb modification. At the age of 30, due to his outstanding performance, he joined the Cyber Heavy Armored Corps and underwent advanced military body modification. He has participated in dozens of battles, large and small, most of which were cleanup missions during planetary development. The targets were the powerful natives of some planets, beasts, and beast body civilization. Clutton and his colleagues were very excited when they heard that their war group had been recruited by the Angel civilization, the defender of the order of justice in the universe, and would travel across the stars to fight in an unknown star field. Because of the defeat of the cyber civilization in the war with the Angel civilization thousands of years ago, the power of the top leaders of the main war faction in the civilization has been unprecedentedly weakened. In addition, being within the scope of the angelic justice order, the cyber civilization has never had any major wars. People with a background naturally don't have to worry about their promotion, but it is a fact that the promotion paths for ordinary soldiers have been almost blocked. If you want to break the solidified promotion path in the army, there is only one way, and that is to obtain a large number of military exploits on the battlefield. So when the war group was selected by the top management, both Clutton and his colleagues were extremely excited, because this meant that they could go one step further in breaking the solidified hierarchy. But now Clayton feels a little regretful, because this war is no different from the wars he has experienced in the past. Those days of fighting wild beasts and slaying savage indigenous creatures on a strange planet are no different from playing house. Although he was thinking about these things in his mind, it did not affect Clayton from pulling the trigger of the gun in his hand and pouring deadly bullets onto the enemy occupying his field of vision. Boom! There was a loud explosion, and an automatic turret about 10 meters away was engulfed in flames. A large amount of soil and metal parts were thrown around, like a mud rain. However, Clutton didn't even move. He only ducked occasionally to avoid the incoming particle beams, and then shot at the enemies in his line of sight without any reduction in number. This is a very despairing thing, because they can't stop the enemy's advance for even a minute. Suddenly, screams came to his ears. Clutton looked sideways and saw that a colleague who had been bragging about his hometown customs to him before the battle was hit by a particle beam in the face and became unrecognizable like melted cheese. But because his body had undergone advanced military modifications, this colleague did not die. He just covered his face and kept moaning in pain. Suddenly the captain's warning message sounded in the LAN communication. "We found a large armored target, be careful to avoid attacks." Clutton raised the muzzle of his gun slightly, looking past the dense automaton, and his pupils shrank slightly, as behemoths 5 to 6 meters high emerged from the dark night and slowly came into his field of vision. The 60 mm carbon steel blasting shells fired by the automatic turrets hit these behemoths and were unable to shake them in the slightest. The ferocious barrels on these huge mechanical creations were obviously not decorations. The muzzles of the behemoths in his sight shimmered in the night, and the next moment thick particle beams shot out. Clutton only felt a roar coming from his side. The next moment the world spun and his vision fell into darkness. The system is restarting. Start system function self-test now. The electronic eye system, normal. The mechanical ear system, normal. A series of system self-test results flashed across Clutton's field of vision like a screen. At the same time, he also regained his ability to move and pushed away the soil covering his body. Continuous explosions and gunshots rang out in Clutton's ears again. Standing up and looking around, the metal bunker originally used as a bunker was tilted here and there, and large pits of different depths replaced the originally flat ground. At the same time, countless gun-wielding humans were fighting in close combat with his companions. While Clutton was still standing there in a daze, a figure slammed him down and cursed at him. "You are desperate for your life. Get up quickly, the enemy has already rushed into the position. Prepare for close combat." After speaking, the figure swung his right hand back and shot out a sharp red blade. He stood up and swung his arm forward, cutting an automaton holding a gun from its abdomen to both ends. Then the cyber warrior skillfully raised his left hand that had turned into a cannon, and a cannonball shot out, blowing the automaton's upper body into pieces. Clutton finally came to his senses. Now he was on the battlefield, and he couldn't be distracted. So he also swung his right hand to transform into a thermal knife, and his left hand turned into a muzzle to join the battlefield, and rushed towards the nearest enemy. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Seminary Angel Binghua. Author, Shifeng Si Wang. Chapter 491. At this moment, the automata have broken through the Cybermen's fire network and rushed into the Cybermen's position. The two sides fought together, but anyone with a discerning eye knows that the defending Cybermen will soon be swallowed up by countless waves of automata. At this moment, several figures flew across the sky, and the next moment a red light fell from the sky, like a sky-high giant blade slicing through the middle of the enemy army. For a time, a large number of four-legged machines were turned into half-melted waste. Then another red energy mass fell, and the explosive fire cloud swallowed up a large number of enemies, and the shock wave overturned countless enemies. However, this still cannot avoid the collapse of the Cybermen's defense line. In the brightly lit and ornately decorated hall, Angel Rand carefully observed the battle situation in the projection. The Joint Company continuously tried to carry out long-range orbital bombing on the Black Star, but with little success due to the dense orbital defense and interception facilities on the Black Star. After a moment, Rand asked the Angel standing on one side. What's going on with the Cybermen? Has the wormhole passage been successfully established? Sister Ran, according to the news from the on-site command Angel Helen, the Cybermen have established a defensive position and the wormhole passage is about to be completed. But just now our soldiers have sent the latest information. Our enemies have sent a large number of troops. Our soldiers have cleared the sky and guaranteed air supremacy in that area. However, the Cybermen cannot survive the enemy's human sea tactics. Holding on for too long. Hearing this, Rand frowned slightly and said, how many ground troops have the enemy sent? Can our soldiers alleviate some of the pressure on them? Sister Ran, I'm afraid this can't be done. The enemy's ground troops have been estimated to exceed 10 million. We can only hope to complete the construction of the wormhole before the opponent breaks through the Cybermen's defense and combine the ground military forces of each affiliated civilization. Plunge into the ground battlefield of Wuxingxing. Ran couldn't help but press her lips against the curved fingers. She was thinking about whether there was a better battle plan. If the battle situation continued to be unfavorable, all the efforts made by the combined fleet during this period would be in vain. However, good command quality did not let Rand give up the current combat plan. Tell the high-level angels left behind on the Sky Blade to lead their elite warriors into the 54,699 area of the Black Star to assist the Cybermen in their defense. In addition, inform Sakaz, Kebrai, Migra, and other civilizations to assemble the landing troops. We will step onto the surface of this planet later. In the end, Rand thought about it and decided to go straight to the dark side and sent out his high-level angels as an emergency force. When the Cybermen Defense Force in Area 54,699 of the Black Star was about to be overwhelmed by the automatic humanoids and automatic combat machines on the Black Star, a powerful force composed of high-level angels and elite angels was thrown into the battlefield to stabilize the cyberspace. Man has reached a breaking point. After stabilizing the Cybermen's defense line, more than a dozen high-level angels led their elite angels to launch a purging attack on Area 54,699 and the enemies gathered around it. The red fire falling from the sky dispersed the eternal night on the Black Star, like a divine punishment sent by the gods, turning the earth into the scorched earth of purgatory. This also permanently changed the topography of the Black Star 54,699 area and the surrounding areas, and also further worsened the already poor ecological environment on the Black Star. For some reason, Wu Heng, the intelligent AI of Wu Xing, did not take any countermeasures, but this is no longer important. When the Angel's engineering robot Tianjian completed the erection of the Stargate in Area 54,699 and opened up a wormhole directly to the surface safely in the Black Star's powerful orbital defense firepower network, a large number of Angel-affiliated civilization troops arrived through this passage. The surface of the Black Star. When millions of ground troops composed of the Sakaz-Skitarii, Kebrai and other affiliated civilizations landed on the surface of the Black Star, everyone's hearts, including the Angels, were already unaccounted for the victory of this battle. Not the slightest doubt. Even if the intelligent AI Wuheng later gathered tens of millions of automatic humanoid and automatic mechanical troops, it could not shake the determination of the Angels and their affiliated civilizations to win. Then an epic war that could be recorded in the history of civilization development by various affiliated civilizations broke out on the Black Star. Even in the evaluation of the Angel civilization, the intensity of this local war was comparable to the battle of racial and physical opposition during the physical war period. The two sides opened up their battle formation in Area 54,699. Although the Angel Alliance's composition was relatively complex and its weapons were quite messy, there was a powerful Angel civilization that firmly controlled the air superiority. The troops under the command of the intelligent AI Wuheng are a force that has no fear and only knows how to move forward. It also has a numerical advantage. On the first day of the battle between the two sides, the forward troops of both sides suffered devastating blows from each other, and thousands of lives were lost on this land every moment. When the war entered its most intense moment, the heavy firepower of both sides began to declare their entry in a high-profile manner, and the casualties on the side of the Angel Union Army increased sharply. However, the Angels responded immediately, using the powerful mobility of high-level and elite Angels to bypass the sea of automatons in front and destroy the groups of large automatic machines. But soon the Angels didn't have much time to support the coalition forces on the ground, because the enemy's air forces also entered the battlefield. Tens of thousands of Angel warriors were unable to do anything else in a sea of millions of enemy aircraft. Just dealing with these enemies had consumed all their energy. Just as the war on the Black Star was in full swing, a team of Angels escorted a Spear of Judgment back to the Sky Blade parked in the starry sky. Tianren commanded the flagship. Angel Ran took the gun of judgment handed over by the high-ranking Angel Ziluo, ran his fingers over the dust and wear on the gun, and asked in a heavy voice. "Is it confirmed?" The fall of the Angel Yinga. The Angel warrior who handed over the Spear of Judgment raised his head slightly, and what came into Ran's eyes was a face still stained with wet tears. "Well, when I found this weapon, I discovered the last words left by Yinga and the experience of losing contact." Seeing Ziluo's look, Ran knew that her relationship with the fallen high-level Angel Yinga was unusual, so she sighed and patted Ziluo's shoulder to comfort her. "This is our destiny as warriors. One day you and I will do the same, dedicating our lives for the future of the Angels and our own beliefs. As for pioneers like Yinga, their stories will never be lost in the history of Angels, but will be sung for thousands of years for those who come after them to admire and express their condolences." After Ran said these words of comfort, she returned the gun of judgment that Ziluo handed her to Ziluo. "This is her weapon, just accept it. It can be regarded as a precious memory." After saying that, Ran left the hall. Before returning the gun of judgment to Ziluo, she had already backed up the images and data on it. Whether or not she had the gun of judgment was dispensable, and she had it's better to leave it directly to the weapon owner's sister. If I could have found this place earlier, Yinga, you would not have died, nor would you have faced such a desperate scene alone." Ziluo's voice was filled with sadness and self-blame, but it only lasted for a few hours before she forcibly controlled her emotions, because in Yinga's last words, she still had one regret that she had not completed, which was to give the promise that others hope for, and Ziluo intends to fulfill that promise for his good sisters and bring the salvation promised by the Angels of the Wuheng people living in hell. Super Seminary Angel Binghua. Author, Shifeng Si Wang. Chapter 492. 8 months before the Battle of Black Star, Angel Yinga was conducting his own civilization observation work on the fourth planet Black Star in the Kalika star system. On a satellite near the Wu star, Yinga sat on a raised rock and read the dark information to check the status of the Wuhang civilization in the past century. The data at the beginning was normal. There were basically no natural disasters in Wuhangxing, and the Wuhang people above lived in peace and stability. Yinga originally thought that the civilization observation mission would also be a dull information detection, but as time went by, Yinga felt more and more that something was wrong with the current situation of Wu Xing, because it was too stable, as if it was a replica, generally no ups and downs. After careful consideration, Yinga finally decided to go to the nearby Wuxing to find out what was going on, and to see for herself the living conditions of the Wuhang people in the Wuhang civilization. When setting off, Yinga did not report her whereabouts to the higher UPS of the Wuhang civilization. Instead, after shielding herself, she directly broke through and entered the atmosphere of the Wuhang star, found a remote gathering place for the Wuhang people, and landed. But what caught Yinga's sight was a lifeless gathering place, with silent roads, empty houses, and the unpleasant stench of the rotting corpses of creatures in the breeding farm. Yinga immediately began to read the dark information in this area, and found that a few years ago, everyone in this gathering place left the gathering place on the same day without any salutes and headed north, never to come back again. Yinga also left the gathering place and flew towards the north, because there was a large city of Wuhang people there. Compared to the empty gathering place that looked like ghosts, Yinga saw many Wuhang people walking on the road above the city. But after flying for a while, Yinga swooped down and landed in a deserted alley between two tall buildings. Then she walked lightly to the entrance of the alley, and then her eyes focused. Because what Yinga saw made her heart tremble. All the Wuhang people on the road were skinny, like walking skeletons. Just when Yinga was observing the Wuhang people on the road in the alley, suddenly the Wuhang people walking on the road stopped in unison, as if the pause button was pressed. Yinga secretly said something bad, and the next moment, sure enough, all the Wuhang people on the road looked in the direction where she was, and then they all ran towards her. Yinga turned around and a figure of Wu Heng, who looked like a skeleton, appeared at the other end of the alley. Without any hesitation, his wings spread out, and his body rose up from the ground and rushed into the sky. And this was like poking a hornet's nest. The entire Wuxingxing seemed to suddenly come to life. Yinga, who was rushing high into the sky, suddenly felt a stabbing pain in his head and his vision became a little blurry. Information invasion. Data dump. These two terms immediately flashed through Yinga's mind, and her climbing speed began to slow down due to this influence. At the same time, a thick blue particle beam shot through the sky from the end of the horizon. Yinga resisted the dizzy feeling in her mind, controlled her body to dodge sideways, and narrowly missed the incoming particle beam. But this was just the beginning. Although he avoided the attack from the sky, he didn't pay attention to the particle cannonballs shooting around him. Yinga's body hanging in the air was immediately shaken by the hits. Yinga did not choose to turn around and fight back. Instead, she dived downwards again and entered the city filled with tall buildings. She kept changing her flight direction in the hope of getting rid of the invisible pursuers behind her. At the same time, in order to prevent the data dumping situation from happening again, Yinga used the powerful computing power of the gene engine to temporarily write a firewall to prevent information intrusion during the flight. What Yinga doesn't know is that the World Eater God, who is in control of the Black Star at the moment, has discovered her. As the defeated subordinate of the Angel Queen, he knows very well that if he cannot kill the angel who broke into the Black Star today, he will soon be where he is. The planet will be surrounded by legions of angels. The situation is such that the World Eater God, who originally planned to go out to stir up trouble for decades, had to make his own plans in advance. The god of world eaters plans to separate part of his own subroutines and turn them into intelligent Ace that govern the planet. He himself will leave the planet early and continue to expand his power. As for this uninvited angel, he naturally accepted it with a polite smile. After several rounds of high-rise buildings in the city, Yinga spread her wings to stop her figure, then moved sideways and rushed into the other side of the high-rise building close to the wall. The whole set of movements was extremely smooth. Then Yinga closed her eyes slightly, and when she opened them again, her eyes were already covered with a faint white light. At the same time, she also saw the true appearance of the following enemy, which was a fusiform aircraft with a length of less than 4 meters. Her hands were slightly open to hold the carried judgment gun, and the judgment gun box behind her was quietly rotated on her waist. Seeing the opportunity, the judgment gun box on Yinga's waist quickly ejected several streaks of red light, hitting the 3 aircraft in the process. Invisible aircraft are nailed to the walls of tall buildings. Before the sound of the explosion could be heard, Yinga followed closely and flew out. She held 2 guns and spun her body past the 2 aircraft, leaving behind 2 fireballs that exploded in the air. In just a short moment, the invisible aircraft that chased Yinga were gone. However, Yinga soon discovered that more and more aircraft began to gather from all directions. However, as a high-level angel, Yinga was not a vegetarian. Relying on the high-rise buildings in the city, she just defeated the gathering aircraft. Under the judgment gun, which can control the ejection direction and recycle the weapon at will, no aircraft can escape Yinga's attack. When Yinga was clearing out those aircraft, it wasn't like she didn't try to leave the planet, but as long as she reached a certain height, she would be hit by intensive firepower against the ship. Although with Yinga's physical strength, a few hits will be fine, but the body will also suffer some damage. If it cannot be repaired in time, sooner or later it will become an irreparable fatal injury. But soon Yinga's heart skipped a beat, because a vast dark cloud was spreading from the end of the horizon at an incredible speed, and soon blocked out all the light radiated by the stars of the Kraken star system. Yinga, who originally planned to risk breaking through the blocking fire network before the dark clouds spread over, had to stop his movements because of several figures appearing in front of him. 4 figures faced each other in the air, 3 of them vaguely surrounding the figure with white wings on its back. The shuttle-shaped aircraft that were constantly attacking seemed to have received some order, and they all retreated, plunging the area into darkness. The airspace was left to 4 figures present. Yinga looked solemn, holding 2 guns of judgment. The remaining guns of judgment were all put back into the gun cases and ready to go. This was all because of the 3 people with metallic silver-gray skin. They had a good reputation in the Angels database. The name is the incarnation of the World Eater God. Angel, put down your weapons and stop resisting. I can give you the opportunity to join the World Eater Empire and become an immortal existence like me. Yinga snorted coldly when she heard this. Don't be ridiculous, your sweet words can deceive other people, but you can't deceive us angels. What you call joining the World Eater Empire is probably to become a part of you and be dominated by you forever. Just like those Wuhang people. As he spoke, one of the judgment guns among the singers pointed downwards. Faced with Yinga's rejection, the god of world eaters showed no anger at all. Just now he just said casually, now that the routine surrender phase has passed, all that's left is to see whose fist is stronger. No nonsense, the 2 sides are civilizations that have already established a hostile relationship. The arm of the 3 incarnations of the World Eater gods on the left side of Yinga completed its reorganization in an instant, and turned into a particle cannon to shoot out a dazzling blue particle. Bundle. Yinga spun in the air to avoid the incoming particle beam, and one of the gun shafts of the judgment gun in her hand was pressed against her forearm to hold the red arm blade struck by another World Eater incarnation. The huge force pushed Yinga's figure towards the pressure flew back several meters. At this time, the last incarnation of the World Eater God flew to Yinga's unsuspecting back without any sense of shame, and the thermal blade glowing with red light in his hand cut mercilessly into Yinga's white neck. But was blocked by a section of the judgment spear ejected from Yinga's lower back. Even so, Yinga felt extremely uncomfortable, but she used this force to open up the arm blade that was coming from the front, turned around and whipped the incarnation of the World Eater God behind, without stopping. Use the gun magazine to eject forward the last 2 guns of judgment that have been charged for a long time in the gun box. As soon as she finished all this, Yinga was hit by a particle beam fired from the side. She fell forward with a groan, but soon she regained control of her body. The 2 incarnations of the World Eater God who had been repelled before and were in close combat with Yinga also took the opportunity to attack again. The thermal energy blades transformed into their arms dragged out a red arc in the air and struck from both sides towards the person with his back to the ground. Yinga is adjusting her posture. The next moment, the spear collided with the sharp blade, making bursts of harsh clanging sounds. Every time the spear of judgment in the Oriole Singer collided with the heat blade transformed into the arm of the god of the World Eater, a powerful energy shock was formed, which was reflected on both sides. What is in his field of vision is the energy aftermath that is constantly spreading in a ring in the air. After all, the god of World Eaters can compete with the Queen of Angels. Although Yinga faced only 3 clones, she was still struggling. She could only keep retreating to gain breathing time to regroup and wait for opportunities to counterattack. When she was still 100 meters away from the ground, Yinga finally found an opportunity to counterattack. She held the gun in her right hand and swept away the oncoming thermal energy blade. At the same time, she leaned back slightly to avoid another thermal energy blade that was coming across. Immediately, Yinga's body flipped in the air, and the spear of judgment in his left hand swept 360 degrees to complete the energy gathering and thrust forward. Most of the spear blade sank into the chest of the incarnation of the World Eater God who was still attacking him in front of him. The next moment, the terrifying heat radiated around the location where the spear of judgment pierced, turning the upper body of the incarnation of the World Eater God a fiery red. But before Yinga could detonate the energy and hit the avatar severely, another avatar of the World Eater God kicked Yinga away with a flying kick, crashing through 2 buildings before barely stopping. Super Seminary Angel Binghua. Author, Shifeng Si Wang. Chapter 493. Yinga, who was lying in the ruins, gritted her teeth, turned over, and ran forward staggeringly. At the same time, her consciousness connected with the judgment gun box and recovered the judgment gun that was ejected at the beginning of the battle. But the sudden impact of the explosion swept Yinga out of the building and fell to the ground outside. After coughing a few times, Yinga didn't dare to stop at all, propped up his body and flapped his wings before flying forward, because he had already heard the explosion of air coming from behind him. Yinga and the World Eater's incarnations chased and escaped. The buildings along the way were affected by the attacks from both sides and either collapsed or became in tatters. Under Yinga's control, the scorching spear of judgment surrounded the area tens of meters around her like a loyal guard. Whenever the incarnation of the World Eater God approached, it would be forced back by its scorching edge. But Yinga didn't feel happy at all, because as the light and heat radiated by stars were blocked, the external energy she could control became less and less. If it weren't for the fact that the core energy needed to maintain the survival of angelic civilization warriors is genes, Yinga may have lost her ability to resist the dark energy transformed by the engine. Although she was able to push back the approaching incarnations of the World Eater God, Yinga was unable to escape their pursuit. Whenever she wanted to escape from the battlefield, the incarnation on the opposite side that was always at a high place would launch dense particle beams to harass her. The other 2 avatars create attack opportunities. A few hours later, the original city seemed to have withstood the baptism of war at this moment. Countless high-rise buildings had collapsed, and there were countless holes in the ones still standing on the ground, some of which were emitting light black smoke. Yinga's breathing was a little rapid, her blue eyes constantly looking around at the surrounding environment and enemies, and her hand holding the gun of judgment showed no signs of relaxing. The incarnations of the World Eater God who still maintained their triangular formation were silent, but secretly their main consciousness, the World Eater God, was getting impatient. Therefore, the combat method of the incarnation of the World Eater God has also changed. It is no longer trying to deal with this angel without injury, but to deal with it as quickly as possible at any cost. The ground exploded, and Yinga spun around. The spear in his hand drew a semicircle and swept toward the incarnation of the World Eater God, briefly knocking it back dozens of meters. Another avatar also took advantage of Yinga's opportunity to turn around and rushed from behind, but was blocked by 3 guns of judgment that fell from the sky. The original scorching heat turned into thunder and lightning, making the avatar among them unable to move. After a long absence, Yinga once again got a one-on-one opportunity. Without hesitation, she raised the red gun of judgment in her right hand, which was growing in dark energy, and threw it towards the long-range combat devourer incarnation standing on a tall building in the distance. Then he focused all his attention on the avatar in front of him. The hot gun blade and the thermal energy blade collided one after another, making bursts of roars, and the solid stone ground was left with cracked footprints by the two. Yinga kept moving, turning left and right and swinging the gun blade to hit the incarnation of the World Eater back. This incarnation of the World Eater God finally completed the data analysis of Yinga's attack pattern. As a result, the gun blade wielded by Yinga did not arrive at the time it was supposed to be swung. Before the incarnation of the World Eater God could think about anything else, the control signal to his legs was suddenly disconnected. It turned out that the gun blade that was supposed to be swung towards his face changed its target and instead attacked his legs. Yinga made a successful attack, and a familiar figure flashed in her mind. The next moment her body started to move. She made a fist with her left hand and turned around, put it into the arms of the incarnation of the World Eater God and hit him on the chin. Just hearing a muffled bang, the God of World Eaters was hit by the huge force and kept flying upwards. Yinga followed closely and fanned her wings to keep up. The sacred language engraved on the gun of judgment in her hand all lit up at this moment. The energy circuit is filled with high heat energy converted from the dark energy poured into Yinga's body. Yinga shouted loudly, and threw the spear of light that had turned into a fiery red color upwards, like a red meteor that penetrated the sky, hitting the floating World Eater incarnation. A dazzling light flashed across the dark sky, followed by a violent roar and an expanding orange fireball. Yinga, who was looking up at the sky, heard the sound of breaking wind. When she lowered her head, she saw a slender triangular spur shooting out, directly piercing her armor and sinking into her right shoulder. The last half of it came out from her back covered in blood. Yinga immediately fell downwards like a bird with broken wings. During the fall, Yinga endured the pain and pulled out the 3-sided thorn that had pierced her right shoulder and was eroding her body tissue, and wrapped it downwards with the high heat of energy conversion. Fling! There was a loud explosion, and fire and black smoke splashed from the ground. Yinga, who fell from the sky, fell directly into the thick smoke, and it only took a moment for Yinga's figure to break out of the thick smoke and fly forward. The pursuing incarnations of the World Eater God also chased away one after another. Just as the incarnation whose arms turned into thermal energy blades just flew past the place where Yinga fell before, he had several long-range missiles with particle muzzles on his body. The incarnation of the World Eater followed closely and was about to fly over. Thick smoke billowed suddenly, and 3 guns of judgment shot out from it in a glyph shape, completely blocking the dodge space of the World Eater's incarnation who had been harassing Yinga from a distance. Immediately afterwards, Yinga, who was holding the last spear of judgment surging with huge energy, struck from bottom to top, hitting the World Eater's incarnation in the chest. The huge impact pushed the incarnation of the World Eater God, whose arms turned into particle cannons, into the sky. Hot energy like magma spread inside his body, causing fiery red cracks to appear on his body surface. In the end, These incarnations of the World Eater God were reduced to hundreds of fragments in the energy flames of the explosion, and were eroded and burned away by the energy flames attached to them. After doing all this, Yinga finally couldn't hold on anymore and covered her right shoulder. The hot blood from the wound seeped out from between her fingers and dripped to the ground. The most dangerous thing is that the only remaining incarnation of the World Eater also reacted, turned around and rushed over, and Yinga's figure that had been flying in the other direction also turned into a figure after Yinga removed its control. The light spot reveals the Spear of Judgment as the carrier. Holographic incarnation is one of the many combat skills uploaded to the Angel database by King Binghua of Heavenly Sword. It uses the weapon engine on the weapon as the data processing center to create a holographic projection that is as fake as real to attract the enemy's attention. As a battle angel who has lived for nearly 10,000 years, Yinga will not neglect to learn such practical combat techniques. In addition, the judgment spear she uses is a plurality of weapons, so it is very suitable for her to use one to carry this combat technique. Although it cannot be compared with the real developer of this technology, Tianji Unwang Binghua, who directly created 4 holographic avatars that can attack independently, it can still achieve miraculous results in some battles. Strictly speaking, this kind of uncomplicated technique only needs to be used once during the battle with the World Eater God, and it will be directly seen through by him who is on guard next time. Unfortunately, this World Eater God, when God was fighting the Heavenly Sword King Binghua, he was not able to force the Angel King to use this fighting technique. Things have reached such a point that the God of the World Eaters, who is observing the battle remotely, is impatient. The loss of the incarnation is secondary. As long as he has the materials for this kind of incarnation, he can do as much as he wants. But he was a little annoyed that he had not been able to capture this high-level angel after so long, so he directly ordered the interceptors and fighter planes in the city where Yinga was located to participate in the operation to encircle and suppress Yinga. Afterwards, the God of World Eaters did not hesitate and started his plan directly. The intelligent AI Wuheng was born from his separate subroutine, through a giant core close to the core of the star Wuheng and all the intelligent machines on the star Wuheng. Connect. 2 hours after the intelligent AI Wuheng took over the Black Star, parts of the Black Star separated to both sides, revealing deep canyons about 1,000 kilometers long. The entire Black Star was separated by these canyons like a cut watermelon. Come on. Then the huge black spears in these canyons rose from the ground and pierced the sky, like huge pillars supporting the sky. After a while, blue energy lightning rushed in the pipes inside these spears, bursting out with dazzling light. The dark sky turned into a dazzling blue at this moment, and the entire planet was wrapped in shining energy lightning, like a world-destroying thunderstorm sent by the gods. The scene was extremely terrifying. The God of World Eaters caused such a big scene, of course, not to destroy the Black Star, but to use this huge energy that he had accumulated for more than 10 years to tear a rift in the space that the Black Star could pass through, that is, it is an unstable space wormhole. Because there were more and more enemies in the city, Yinga's body was damaged and she could not deal with the enemies as easily as before, so she left the city and flew to the mountainous area with complex terrain. Due to the sudden change of the Black Star, the magnetic field of the entire planet became unprecedentedly chaotic, and the signal became extremely unstable, causing the aircraft chasing Yinga to squander like blind men. Yinga successfully took this opportunity to get rid of the pursuers, and then used the shielding algorithm to block radar waves, dark information scanning and other more than a dozen angel-known detection methods, and hid in a temporarily excavated cave. Prevent being discovered by those aircraft cruising in the sky. While Yinga was getting rid of his pursuers, the World Eater God's plan had also reached the most critical moment. Will he successfully leave the star field through the space rift and gain some breathing time, or would he be attacked by those who might arrive later? An army of angels besieged this place, and ultimately 100 years of hard work came to naught. Even with the mind of the God of the World Eaters, he can't help but feel a little uneasy. Although he is besieged here by the angel army, the worst he can do is start over again, but the god of the world eaters has created such a huge battle just to attack the angel civilization. Of course he doesn't want to waiting for hundreds of years. The energy lightning that enveloped the entire planet began to twist and converge under the pull of a huge force field emitted by a giant spire that pierced into the universe. The terrifying energy radiation illuminated the surrounding starry sky. When civilization develops to a certain level, the substances they observe are no longer simple atoms and particles, but will involve the realms of space and even time. Compared with observing time, which is ethereal and whose concept of existence is very vague, the ubiquitous space in the universe is much easier to study. The god of world eaters has lived for an unknown amount of time, and the countless civilizations he has devoured contain all kinds of weird technologies. Nowadays, this technology that uses huge energy to impact the stable structure of space to create space cracks that can be passed by aircraft is one of them. Its characteristic is that as long as the energy reaches the standard, no additional special equipment is needed. You can open as big a space crack as you want. How big of a space rift can it open? It's a typical force that makes bricks fly. As for why other more stable and mature technologies were not chosen, it was because time and environment did not allow it. Wuxingxing was just a small planetary civilization and lacked a lot of basic equipment. If the god of world eaters hadn't been an expert in material transformation technology, trying to transform the black star into what it is today would be nothing short of a fool's errand in just a few hundred years. When everything was ready and the coordinates of the star field were confirmed, the huge energy gathered by the force field turned into a huge energy lightning that illuminated the entire black star and struck the void nearby. At this moment, the space experienced a slight collapse, followed by a huge distortion. With the continuous impact of energy lightning and the influence of an invisible force field, the space shattered like a mirror, forming a column that was even larger than the U-shaped star. I like black slits. Then a suction force was generated in the crack, sucking the nearby black star from its orbit. At the same time, in a remote star field unknown how many light-years away, the space became distorted, and a dazzling blue light appeared in the center, and then suddenly shattered, extruding a planet wrapped in black gas. More than half a month has passed since the battle with the incarnation of the World Eater God. During this time, the damaged parts of Yinga's body have been repaired. During this period, Yinga used her excellent foot strength and optical algorithms to conceal her figure, and surveyed an area of thousands of kilometers, and discovered many automated factories and dense orbital defense facilities buried underground. Of course, in order not to be discovered, Yinga did not take the risk to sneak in to find out. She was not one of the detective angels under King Apocalypse who had fully equipped her space algorithm and infiltration skills. Looking at the red dots marked by herself on the light screen in front of her, Yinga frowned tightly. If every place in Wuxiangxing was the same as the map in front of her, then Wuxiangxing would have turned into a map. A war fortress that can swallow countless lives? Based on the combat effectiveness of the Angel Legion, if you accidentally break into this planet, even the combat ability of the Angel Warriors will definitely suffer a lot. But the next moment, Yinga turned off the projection screen in front of her, because no matter how much she thought, it was useless. Her communication ability was blocked by the dark clouds in the sky, and she could not contact Merlot Heavenly Court at all. Changing her sitting position, Yinga leaned on the tree trunk behind her, looking through the branches and leaves at the city not far away that was faintly visible in the dark night. Feeling the sea breeze blowing, she closed her eyes and planned to rest for a while. She was looking for ways to leave the planet. I don't know how long it took, an hour or two, but Yinga suddenly opened her eyes. There were more than a dozen weak reflected signals in her induction, which were very similar to those intelligent combat weapons under the command of the World Eater God, but there were a little difference. Yinga immediately became interested. A dozen intelligent combat machines were not even a warm-up for her. As long as she did not encounter those difficult incarnations of the World Eater God, Yinga would have the confidence to survive the siege of intelligent combat machines. Breakout. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Seminary Angel Binghua. Author, Shifeng Si Wang. Chapter 494. Kaka. There was a slight sound of footsteps on the ground, and a group of more than a dozen figures were holding firearms and observing the surroundings vigilantly. Captain, no abnormalities were found, and no bionic machines were detected nearby. Well, confirm it's safe. Let's spread out and collect precious metals and energy sources nearby. We can't stay here for too long. After giving the order, these dozen figures dispersed around and began to search the metal processing factory located on the outskirts of the city. While everyone else was searching for things, the man as the captain was staring at the dark night sky in a daze from his seat by the window. At this time, a team member who seemed to be female came over. Captain Ai How, every time you act recently, I see that you look worried. Is there some difficulty that we can't help you solve together? Ai How sighed and looked at Krati, the only female member of the team. She was only 17 years old. Before the Omnic catastrophe, girls her age should still be studying peacefully in school and having an encounter. A love affair that lasts a lifetime. But now she and her group of big-head soldiers risk death to come to the area controlled by Omnics and steal resources secretly. The thought of this made Ai How feel uncomfortable. Ai How waved his hand and said, Krati, no one told you not to pry into other people's thoughts. But Captain Ai How, you once said that if you hold everything in your heart, you will get sick sooner or later. Ai How was speechless. This was indeed what he had said to this girl. He finally choked out a sentence in annoyance. What can a little girl like you know? The team members below who were searching and organizing supplies remained silent when they saw this scene. Only two older ones were whispering in the corner. Captain, this is too rude, Krati's thoughts are so obvious. Humph, what do you know? How could the captain not know Krati's thoughts? He just knew that and was unwilling to respond. In this world, it's good to be alive, but maybe that action would have wiped out all of us. Isn't it better to do everything while you are still alive? Okay, stop talking and get to work. Ai How walked behind the two team members responsible for detecting the surrounding environment and asked aloud. How's it going? Is there anything unusual? One of the team members who was staring at the screen turned around and saw the captain replied quickly, report to the captain, there are no signs of Omnic weapon activity around. Continue probing and don't get distracted. Ai How turned around and was about to leave, but as soon as he took 2 steps, an alarm sounded from behind. He immediately turned back and looked at the screen in front of the two team members. I saw a red dot approaching the area at an extremely fast speed. Before the two team members could call the police, Ai How immediately shouted to the surrounding area. Everyone stop, turn off the lights, everyone gather. Krati, get ready to start silencing our reflected signals. Just in an instant, the atmosphere of the processing plant changed. After hearing the captain's voice, everyone immediately put down their work and ran towards an armored truck. But what these Wuhan people didn't know was that the fighter planes in the sky were originally coming for them, along with more than 20 bionic machines and hundreds of automatic humanoid weapons. After the intelligent AI Wuhang took over Wu Xing, the World Eater God left the planet and handed over all affairs to it. The World Eater God only had one request for it, and that was to inflict as much damage as possible the possible incoming angel civilization. The intelligent AI Wuhang has been calculating for a long time after obtaining the information of the angel civilization. The first step is to gather the remaining Wuhang people on the planet for control, instead of freeing them like before when the World Eater God was still there. So the intelligent AI Wuhang specially allocated precious computing power to organize and plan this large-scale cleanup operation. Boom! Violent explosions resounded in the factory. The bionic intelligent weapon crawling on all fours fired a rapid-fire cannon on its back and a particle cannon that could rotate 360 degrees on its tail, continuously destroying the bunkers of Ai-Hao and others. The more than 20 people led by Ai-Hao were selected to participate in the task of infiltrating enemy-occupied areas to collect resources because they were all elite warriors who had experienced hundreds of battles. With the exoskeleton-assisted power armor on their bodies, they could do. He is as agile as a Superman and can easily jump 5 or 6 meters. But even so, Ai-Hao and his team members could only retreat while fighting, because their enemies were not only those bionic machines, but also many Wuhan people who looked very similar to them and had black meridians under their skin while holding guns. "Captain, those big guys are too much in the way. We won't have time to retreat unless we solve them." Ai-Hao, who was pulling the trigger to kill the Wuhan people who acted as rigidly as machines, felt the ominous premonition in his heart getting worse, but as the captain, he still issued the most correct order at the moment. "Everyone retreat to Krati and protect yourself." After saying this to his companions around him, Ai-Hao swooped down to avoid the incoming particle shells, and rolled towards another bunker among the scattered earth and rock fragments to avoid the crows that were advancing in coordination with the bionic intelligent machinery. A constant rain of bullets. "Krati, start the mechanical crawler immediately, clear the surrounding enemies as quickly as possible, and assist us in retreating. We are likely to be targeted by Omnics." In a corner of a factory not far from Ai-Hao and others, a specially modified transport truck was parked here. Ai-Hao's contact person, Krati, was in the cab covered by canvas behind the truck. After receiving the order from his captain, Krati replied with a brief "understood," quickly turned on the switch above his head, and then put a pair of eyes connected with cables on his head. The sound of tearing cloth sounded, and 6 mechanical legs stood up, and then stretched to both sides to prop up the middle part. It was very similar to the bionic mechanical weapon chasing Ai-Hao and others, but in addition to the weapon, there was also a rectangular metal on the back. There are obvious welding marks. Ai-Hao and others here were still resisting, but there were already casualties. A team member who couldn't dodge was hit by a particle cannon and was blown into 2 pieces on the spot. He didn't even have time to say his last words. As the enemy presses closer and closer, the depth space of Ai-Hao and others is almost exhausted. If this continues, there will be no second outcome for them except being surrounded and annihilated here. Boom! A bionic mechanical weapon broke through the wall amid splashing earth and rocks, and a particle cannon at its tail accurately hit the head of one of the similar machines chasing Ai-Hao and others. Then the 2 rapid-fire cannons on it fired continuously, blasting it away. "Back away!" Someone in the team led by Ai-Hao cheered, and then immediately cleaned up the surrounding automatons, that is, those robots that looked like they were covered in a layer of Wuhan human skin. After Krati eliminated one of the bionic machines in a surprise attack, he quickly moved laterally to avoid the firepower of the remaining bionic machines, and then used the logical loopholes in the AI of these omniums and the surrounding walls as bunkers to deal with the remaining ones. After Ai-Hao and others were no longer harassed by the bionic machines, they cleared the automated humanoids on the battlefield in the shortest possible time, and then began to cooperate with the bionic mechanical modifications driven by Krati to destroy the remaining bionic machines. After the enemies were wiped out, everyone present looked at the remains of the bionic machine and felt a pity. If it were closer to the base, they might be able to pull it back and put together a complete one. As the captain, Ai-Hao led his men to clean up the battlefield hastily after the battle, and then began to lead the team, preparing to escape before the Omnic weapons completed the siege on them. One of the reasons why the battle ended so quickly was the rich experience of Ai-Hao and others. Another reason was that the AI that controlled these bionic machines and automatons was very stiff, as if they were programmed. After encountering an enemy, these intelligent weapons will only deal with them according to the prepared response methods in the system. Therefore, once you are familiar with them, you can easily use them around. Of course, this is only when the number is relatively small. When the number of these intelligent weapons reaches a certain level, they will connect with each other and share their computing power to form a regional temporary intelligent AI. At this time, if you want to use intelligence, those who have rigid weapons are simply looking for death. Just as AI Hao and others followed the bionic machine driven by Crotty and rushed towards the gap in the encirclement they had torn apart at the fastest speed, the sky suddenly lit up, and 2 half-meter thick blue particle beams radiated across the night sky. Shooting. Boom. A particle beam happened to hit the middle of AI Hao's team. The terrifying energy and spreading kinetic energy instantly blew away everything within a radius of 10 meters, and AI Hao's retreating troops were no exception. AI Hao, who was blown away by the air wave, gritted his teeth and endured the stinging pain in his chest and climbed up. He turned around and scanned with the scanner on his helmet. The result made his pupils shrink and he couldn't help but say, "Advanced Omnic Weapon Destroyer." In the processing plant hundreds of meters away, a huge metal figure easily collapsed the thick outer wall. Its 4 thick mechanical legs hanging with thick armor sank slightly into the ground. The particle turrets on both sides seemed to move slightly. Really calibrate the target. AI Hao ignored his body that was about to fall apart and almost roared to his companions. Spread out. The next moment, a more violent explosion struck than before, and AI Hao flew several meters away and fell to the ground. AI Hao opened his eyelids with great effort, and what came into view was an extremely blurry picture. AI Hao also vaguely heard his team members shouting something in grief. In the distance, the large-scale intelligent weapon that AI Hao called the Destroyer moved forward while firing particle beams in the direction of AI Hao and others at a rate of 1 every 2 seconds. There were roars one after another, and AI Hao's team members were rapidly reducing their numbers. Even though their mobility has been greatly improved with the help of exoskeletons, they are still fragile flesh and blood, and the shock wave of the explosion can easily take their lives. Crotty, the only one in the team who drove a bionic machine, started to fight back after the particle beam hit. However, the particle shells fired by the most powerful tail cannon on the bionic machine directly shattered into countless pieces when they hit the shield on the surface of the destroyer. Particle. While Crotty's bionic machine attracted the attention of the saboteurs, AI Hao's surviving team members quickly ran over to pick him up and ran towards a depression. However, Crotty is not a being who makes the impossible possible. After using his familiarity with the intelligent weapon locking system to dodge 2 particle beams, the saboteur who adjusted the computing unit predicted and hit 2 mechanical legs. The running bionic machine turned over on the spot, knocking the driver Crotty to pieces, and his vision went dark and he fainted. AI Hao, who had already recovered, could only shout helplessly when he saw this scene. The indignation in his heart made him almost go crazy. At this moment, a red stream of light passed over the heads of AI Hao and others, directly penetrating the destroyer's shield and knocking him through. The next moment, several streams of light, much thicker than the previous ones, shot out from the air toward the surrounding intelligent weapons. Then several roars sounded, followed by rolling clouds of fire. The hot air swept in, forcing AI Hao and others to crawl on the ground. Hurry up and save your companions. Those intelligent machines will come back soon. A warm voice came from the air, and AI Hao and others lying on the ground looked up and their eyes suddenly opened wide. It was a graceful woman wearing gorgeous light armor, with only her white chin exposed, her face covered by a helmet, and a pair of white wings behind her back. Oh my God! Am I dreaming? God, I actually saw God. The 2 older team members looked at Yinga, who was covered in orange-red clothes due to the firelight, and knelt down excitedly on the spot, clasping their hands together and praying. It was Yinga who rushed over after detecting an unknown reflected signal in the air. When she arrived, the intelligent weapons under the command of the World Eater God had already engaged them. In today's environment, the people who would engage in firefights with smart weapons must be the surviving Wuhan people on Wuxingxing, and Yinga felt a little guilty about these people. If she had not failed to fulfill her responsibility as a civilized observer, Wuhang civilization would not be in this situation, so Yinga took action without hesitation after arriving. First, a long-distance sniper throw of the judgment gun destroyed the saboteurs who kept firing at Ai Hao and others. At the same time, the remaining judgment gun bullets in the gun box were ejected, destroying the other two extremely fast weapons in two directions. The approaching minions of the World Eater God. In the air, Yinga looked around to see if there were any enemies she missed. At the same time, she reached out and made a move, and the guns of judgment that were ejected by the projectiles flew back to the gun box on her back to recharge. Ai Hao and others below had already reached the bionic machine that had overturned due to its mechanical legs being destroyed, and were trying to lift it up to reveal the cockpit with its back pressed underneath. But because they were on the battlefield, they had no tools, and the exoskeletons they wore were jet-type ones that focused on action, sacrificing their own efforts. As a result, the rescue operation reached a deadlock. In the end, Yinga couldn't stand it anymore, so she landed, stretched out her hand and used a little force to turn the bionic machine weighing more than 10 tons right side up again. Then Yinga didn't ask the surprised Ai Hao and others at the side, lightly slashed the cockpit a few times with her long gun, cut open a small door, and pulled out the Wuhang who was suspected to be an underage girl. Super Seminary Angel Binghua. Author, Shifeng Si Wang. Chapter 495. On the vast sea, a transport ship more than 20 meters long left the hidden port and sailed quickly towards the sea. Ai Hao and others who were surviving on the deck looked at the city getting further and further away in the dark night. I felt relieved. The reason why Ai Hao and other Wuhang people relaxed was because those intelligent weapons did not have naval combat models. It seemed that they had given up on the territory of the sea. The concept of the sea was originally used by the Kamigawa civilization to describe the large areas on the planet covered by water resources. With the establishment and disintegration of the Kamigawa Pan-Civilization Alliance, a large number of new civilizations were affected by it, and most of them inherited parts of the Kamigawa civilization. Culture. Among them, the most widely circulated is to call the star the sun, and to call the vast area covered by water resources on the planet the ocean. Yinga stood on the edge of the deck and looked at the dark sea. The light sea breeze blew and her mood calmed down, until a sound of footsteps broke the tranquility. Dear Angel Goddess, on behalf of all the members of my team, I would like to thank you for your life-saving grace. I wonder how we should call you your divine name. Ai Hao raised his hand and saluted and asked respectfully. It wasn't until all of them were safe that Ai Hao thought about communicating with the abnormal being who saved them. It is true that anomalies exist. Ai Hao is not a believer in the angel on Wuxingxing. For Yinga, the legendary angel, he only respects the strong man and expresses gratitude for saving his life. When Yinga heard this, she turned around, looked with her blue eyes at the young Wuhang man who was half a head taller than herself, and answered in a very gentle voice. Just call me Yinga. I know you have some doubts about my sudden appearance, but when I see your now civilized head of state, I will reveal all my identity. Anyway, no matter how bad your current situation is, it can't get any worse, right? In the end, Yinga asked with a smile. Ai Hao looked at the female angel with a beautiful face and long golden hair in front of him, and he really couldn't bear any doubt in his heart. If this female angel hadn't taken action to destroy the destroyer, they would all have been killed by the destroyer's particle beam cannon at this moment. I understand. I will report your situation to Goddess Yinga as soon as I arrive at the base. After Ai Hao said this, the scene fell silent. Ai Hao is not good at words. He is just an ordinary soldier who has to stand up when forced by the crisis of civilization. Facing the legendary angel with the name of a god, he had to treat it with caution. He was afraid that he might make this angel who seemed to have a good temper angry because of what he said wrongly, thereby endangering the lives of other people on the ship. Although Yinga is a female angel with a gentle personality, thousands of years have not been in vain. Naturally, she can see AI Hao's concerns at a glance. This is actually what most civilization observers will encounter. Those pre-nuclear civilizations and civilizations that have just entered the space civilization often worship angels as gods. Once upon a time, a civilization observer was conducting his own planetary observation work and discovered that an unexplained civil war had occurred in the civilization. In order to find out the reason, this civilization observer notified the top management of the civilization and received a very grand welcome. When this civilization observer angel asked her about the cause of the war on her planet and whether she needed the help of angels, the high-level civilization of the planet told the observer angel that there were terrorists who were trying to subvert the government to satisfy their own ambitions. They were conducting an encirclement and suppression campaign, and said that they did not need the help of angels and they could handle it on their own. Although this angel observer had good intentions, he was not easy to fool. On the surface, he promised that the higher UPS of the civilization would not intervene without authorization, but he quietly sneaked back after leaving the planet. It turned out that this was not the so-called encirclement and suppression of terrorists at all, but a brutal enslavement and massacre of ethnic minorities. It turns out that some of the minority races on this planet were unwilling to be enslaved and exploited by the largest race, and in desperation broke out in an uprising to fight for autonomy. But how could the largest race that was used to being domineering over them tolerate such a thing? Therefore, in order to scare the monkeys, they directly carried out a bloody suppression of these rebellious minority races. Strictly speaking, this is an internal matter of the civilization, and angels should not interfere. However, this civilized observer is deeply influenced by the order of justice and cannot bear to see the weak suffer such bullying. Plus, he has the ability to change everything. In the end, this civilized observer intervened alone in the war of suppression, and helped those minority races defeat their oppressors, deterring the military power of the entire planet, and spent more than 10 years balancing the distribution of multifaceted interests and establishing a multiracial coexistence. A relatively harmonious coalition government. Afterwards, the observer angel returned to the mellow heavenly court and was praised by Queen Keisha, but was punished by the heavenly sword king Binghua. The reason was that she failed to abide by the law of justice and order and reported it to the Merlot heavenly court and interfered in other civilized government affairs without authorization. She was suspended from her position as a civilized observer and was also fined to guard the sacred expedition hall of the Merlot heavenly court for 500 years. The punishment of standing guard was nothing to that angel, it was just a bit boring, but this incident made all the angels understand one thing. Unless there is an emergency, you must abide by the law of justice and order of Merlot heaven. Otherwise, even if you do the right thing, you will be punished by the heavenly sword king afterwards. Because the heavenly sword king is the superior of all the battle angels in Merlot heaven, that is, the military commander of the angel civilization, and is only responsible to the angel Queen Kesha. Seeing that Ai Hao was silent, Yinga had nothing to do and began to inquire about Wu Xingxing's affairs in the past few decades. Faced with the angel's proactive inquiry, Ai Hao finally found the topic and began to tell Yinga about the dramatic changes in Wu Xingxing in the past 30 years. 30 years ago, Ai Hao was just born. The initial Omnic catastrophe began with intelligent robots produced by a company called World Eater's Intelligent Machinery. Because of the development of the times, Wu Xingxing has focused most of its attention on the space exploration industry, and most of the industries on the local planet have entered automated production. Therefore, when intelligent robots that do not know how to work hard, protest, or ask for wages from their bosses enter the market, they are warmly welcomed by the middle and high-income classes. 27 years ago, most of the jobs in Wuxing were occupied by various engineering machines, including transportation, sanitation, and medical care, almost all positions that did not require much flexibility. At the same time, under the guidance of Wuheng civilization's government, the massive unemployment did not have a great impact on society, because most of the unemployed Wuhan people were promoted to management and managed their mechanical employees. This allowed Wuhan civilization to liberate a large number of young adults, and most of these young adults entered the space exploration industry under the guidance of the government and began to explore various planets in the Kraken star system. But the good times didn't last long. As soon as Wuxing shifted its center of gravity, many incidents of intelligent robots losing control occurred in the local galaxy. The World Eaters Company, the largest manufacturer of intelligent robots, faced complaints from all walks of life and ignored them at all. It just frantically started producing bionic mechanical intelligent robots. It was already half a year before the Wuxiang government reacted, but by then the World Eaters Company had unknowingly formed an army of intelligent machines. In the end, after the negotiations between the Black Star government and the World Eaters Company were broken, a war broke out between the two sides, which was the First Omnic War. The battle between man and machine has begun. Will the intelligent machinery of the World Eaters Company win and rule the Wuhan civilization to prosperity, or will the Wuhan government suppress the World Eaters Company and march into the universe? As the war expanded, the Wuhan government had to recall the troops used in the outer space exploration industry, and the two sides fought on a small black star with bruises. But when the Wuhan government finally won and successfully suppressed the World Eaters Company, it was discovered that all this was just a farce of fratricide in the eyes of the mastermind behind the scenes. In just 2 days, the Wuhan government collapsed. The entire planet's networked automatic machines betrayed their masters at the same time. They went from hard-working tools to killers of the Wuhan people. The Wuhan people call this intelligent machine rebellion an omnic catastrophe. As time goes by, the resistance of the Wuhan people becomes weaker and weaker. 25 years ago, the Wuhan people were driven into the sea by intelligent machines and had to build base cities on some islands to survive. But the sea in Wuxing is not very large, and the islands are sparse. Therefore, the life of the Wuhan people on the island is very stressful, and they often need to frequently sneak into the mainland to collect energy and some supplies. This kind of life was not broken until more than half a month ago. The sudden arrival of eternal night made it even worse for the Wuhan people who were already struggling to survive. As a last resort, the current head of the Wuhan civilization can only send many collection teams to obtain resources on the mainland to maintain consumption. After listening to Ai Hao's narration of this period of history, Yinga felt very uncomfortable and a little annoyed at the same time, because it was obvious that the World Eater Company was a puppet of the World Eater God. And given that guy's identity and size, his purpose is by no means as simple as destroying the civilization of this planet. The God of the World Eaters must have an unknown plan, otherwise he would not have discovered the abnormality of this planet. Blocking external communications from the planet. By the way, before I met you, I saw many Wuhan people with black meridians in the city. Why did they become like that? Yinga suddenly remembered those strange Wuhan people she had seen more than half a month ago. Confused, she asked Ai Hao on the spot what was going on with those Wuhan people. Ai Hao was silent for a while before speaking. It was obvious that this topic did not make him happy. Those Wuhan people with black veins on their bodies can no longer be considered Wuhan people. In the early days of the Omnic catastrophe, the Omnics released a kind of miniature automatic robots, and they spread like viruses among us Wuhan people. At the same time, these micro-robots will gradually replicate themselves in the body of the invaded, and eventually take control of the body of the invaded, turning them into cheap puppet weapons of Omnics. When Yinga heard this, she understood. No wonder Ai Hao had been silent for a while before answering his question. His own people had become the fighting puppets of his life and death enemies. No intelligent life form could tolerate such a thing. Afterwards, Yinga asked Ai Hao some questions about the current situation of the Wuhan civilization. One day later, the ship Yinga took finally arrived at the port of an island, which is now the largest Wuhan base on the Wuxing. It's called the Final Fortress. The meaning of its name is clearly visible. This is the last stronghold of the Wuhang people. If it is destroyed, then the Wuhang civilization will be declared extinct. The head of Wuhang civilization, who had received the news in advance, personally led a team to welcome Yingga's arrival and welcomed her into his office in the center of the island. Head of civilization Wuhang is a middle-aged man in his 60s with slightly graying temples. As soon as he met Yingga, he noticed that head Wuhang's complexion was not very good-looking and he had faint dark circles under his eyes. Respecting your excellency Angel Yingga, Captain Ai Hao has already reported the details to me. Now our Wuhang civilization is in danger. Can the angel civilization lend a helping hand to save us poor mortals? The words of the head of state Wuhang were very sincere, with a hint of hope in his humility. It was obvious that the current situation of the Wuhang civilization had forced the head of state to place his hopes on the illusory angel civilization. Although Yingga wanted to give hope to this mortal head of state, she couldn't contact the Merlot Heavenly Court at the moment, nor could she apply for support from her sisters of the same race. I'm sorry, head of state, but now this planet has been completely blocked by those omnics, and I have temporarily lost contact with Merlot Heaven. Before I find a way to reconnect with Merlot Heaven, I will do my best to help you get through this difficult time. If you need anything, as long as I can help, you can come to me. Yingga's apologetic words made head Wuhang a little disappointed. Then thank you so much, Lord Angel. Afterwards, head of state Wuhang told Yingga about the problems encountered by the Wuhang people today, the most pressing of which are energy and food issues. Because the space on the sea is limited, even if a special cultivation model is used, it cannot provide for the daily consumption of millions of people on the island, because the area where the Wuhang people live alone occupies more than half of the island. With the addition of the industrial zone, there is only a small area left in the military zone. In the past, the thermal radiation energy from the star could barely sustain consumption, but the arrival of the eternal night destroyed everything. To prepare for a rainy day, head of state Wuhang and his combat commanders organized a large-scale resource collection operation 10 days ago and dispatched more than 100 teams. As a result, less than half of them returned successfully. Hearing this, Yingga said that if there is another operation to collect resources next time, she can accompany her to protect her. As long as she does not encounter special circumstances, that is, the incarnation of the World Eater God, she can guarantee the success rate of the operation. Head Wuhang heard this overjoyed. After the conversation with head of state Wuhang, Yingga was also assigned a residence, located in the eastern area of the final fortress, away from the noise of factories and military areas. Super Seminary Angel Binghua. Author, Shifeng Si Wang. Chapter 496. The arrival of Yingga was a shot in the arm for the last fortress of the Wuhang people. Under the propaganda of the angel-believing sect members in the fortress, the originally numb people in the fortress finally experienced a slight change. However, this change is not too obvious, because angels and gods are too far away from them. The ordinary Wuhang people in the fortress still get up in the morning and go to work in the factory or work on the farm. At mealtime, I eat the nutritious meal distributed by the base, which is a bag of sticky synthetic food. Then I continue to work until the evening. I drag my exhausted body back to my small residence to rest. The next day, I repeat what I did yesterday. Everything. The entire final fortress is like a machine that is barely keeping running. Every Wuhang person is a cog in this machine, but sooner or later this machine will collapse under the internal pressure. Yingga believes that the head of state Wuhang also understands this truth, but at the same time, Yingga also understands that the head of state does not want to change everything, he is just powerless. What he can do is to make this machine on the verge of collapse run as long as possible. Longer. Yingga had no other place to go, so she settled in this fortress city. When the head of state Wuhang was not organizing resource collection operations, Yingga helped in the industrial zone of the fortress city, mostly solving some problems for people in Wuhang. Industrial and data problems that seem difficult. Yinga's powerful power allows him to easily do things that can only be done by industrial machines, and some more difficult metal smelting can also be performed using dark energy. At the same time, with the help of Yinga, Wuhang's civilization quickly made breakthroughs in some technical problems. Although Yinga is an angel who specializes in combat in the Merlot Heavenly Court, whether it is the energy-driven algorithm or some of the combat techniques that Yinga has learned, they all involve the basic cosmic physics, dark energy application, space structure, and basics of angelic civilization. Knowledge of subjects such as sacred language programming. At the same time, while helping the Wuhang people, Yinga was also trying to break through the blockade of the planet by the god of the world eaters, trying to contact the Marrow Heavenly Court. It's a pity that Yinga doesn't have the knowledge reserve and research heart of the Queen of Angels, so she can't find any way to break through the blockade. Time came to the 5th month when Yinga was trapped in Wuhangxing. Half a year passed in the blink of an eye. Under Yinga's protection, several resource collection operations organized by Wuhang's leader were successful. But this still cannot solve the increasingly serious food crisis in Fortress City. In order to alleviate the food crisis, Fortress City has to reduce the share of nutritious meals and give priority to soldiers and workers. The share of women and children is only maintained at the minimum level of consumption to survive. Another resource collection operation ended, and Yinga returned to the fortress on the resource collection team's ship. Because she didn't want to attract too many people's attention, Yinga hadn't worn angel armor for a long time. Instead, she chose to cover her striking features and hair color with a hooded brown robe. Yinga, who was walking on the road to her residence in the fortress, suddenly stopped and looked sideways at the alley on the roadside. After hesitating, Yinga turned around and walked towards the alley. A faint sob came from a little girl leaning against the dirty wall. Yinga looked around the surrounding environment. The dark night had no effect on her. From the chaotic footprints and the ruins of a small shack, it was obvious that the little girl's shelter had been destroyed, and if Yinga's prediction was correct, the limited food distributed by the fortress official to the girl was probably also taken away. Yinga has seen this kind of thing more than once, but there is no way to prevent it from happening, because even the fortress officials are powerless to do anything about it, and the limited manpower is used to maintain security in some important areas. Seeing a stranger entering the alley, the little girl backed away in fear, and her sobbing voice gradually became lower. But soon the little girl's sobbing stopped abruptly, because a piece of military compressed food was handed to her by the eerie hooded man, and a very gentle female voice sounded at the same time. After eating, find another place to live, and be careful to avoid those people who bully you. After Yinga said this, she stood up and prepared to leave, but after taking a step, she had to stop because the little girl behind her grabbed the hem of her robe. "Sister, can you let me follow you? I will do any job." The little girl prayed that she would not be able to survive for long without the protection of adults in this fortress, so when she met someone with a kind heart, she would do her best to seize the opportunity. Yinga looked back at the little girl's dirty face and tattered clothes, and her heart was slightly shaken. The reason why Yinga left so decisively just now was because she was afraid that she would be soft-hearted, because she could not save what she saw. Everyone. After an hour, Yinga took a towel and wiped the wet hair of the little girl she had picked up. In the end, Yinga took the little girl who prayed to her back to her residence, a small room with only a table, a bed, and a weapon rack against the wall. The reason why the decoration is so simple is because Yinga doesn't need to eat, so she doesn't need a kitchen. She only has 2 pieces of clothes that she usually wears, and even the bed Yinga rarely sleeps on. "My name is Yinga, what's your name?" Yinga picked up her own set of clothes and trimmed them. At the same time, he asked the girl who was sitting quietly on the edge and staring at her. His tone was very gentle, as if he was talking to his sister. "Sister Yinga, my name is Yao. Thank you Sister Yinga for taking me in. I will work hard to do housework." Yinga smiled and rubbed her little head. Then you should work hard. I will leave this room to you to clean your sister when I am not around. After being groomed, Yao became extremely cute, with fair and clean skin, long yellowish hair, and a pair of dark eyes that were unusually endearing. Anyway, Yinga likes Yao very much. She has a sweet mouth and loves to talk, but her personality is a bit cowardly. Sometimes Yinga's casual words may cause Yao to misunderstand something, and tears will fall down. Since adopting Yao, Yinga's anxiety, which was originally caused by not being able to contact Merlot Heavenly Court for a long time, has eased a little. And Yao is also very well behaved and sensible. Every time Yinga comes back, the room is clean and tidy, and there is boiled tea. Although Yinga has said many times that there is no need to do these things, Yao insists because this is the only thing she can do. Time came to the 6th month when Yinga was trapped in Wuxing. Even with Yinga's protection, the collection of resources began to become extremely difficult. The environment of Yanjai caused destruction to the already fragile living environment of Wuhang civilization. Sexual blow. Food shortages and energy crises can be solved, but the oxygen content in the air continues to drop, and the temperature continues to drop, making the top leaders of Wuhang civilization fall into despair. Although Yinga has great power, there is nothing she can do about it. If the environment of the entire planet is to change, only the Holy Right and the high-level scientific research angels under her command have the ability to change it. Time came to the 195th day when Yinga was trapped in Wuxingzing. Yinga held Yao and sat by the window, staring at the fortress city with snowflakes floating outside the window. Sister Yinga, I feel a little difficult to breathe recently. Am I sick? Yinga's arms holding Yao tightened slightly, and after a moment she comforted her. It's okay, Yao, you are not sick. And you will get better soon. Hearing this, Yao continued to huddle in Yinga's arms, enjoying the few warmth she had had since she was a child. After an unknown amount of time, Yao whispered. Sister Yinga, I heard from your brother who went on the mission with you that you are a god from the sky, extremely powerful, and no smart weapon can be your opponent. But I feel that Sister Yinga, you are nothing like those omnipotent gods in the story. You are the kindest person I have ever seen. But recently, I often see you, Sister Yinga, sitting there frowning and thinking. Sister Yinga, you must be working hard to save people like Yao, right? But Sister Yinga, you have done enough. Yao actually knows that our Wuhang civilization is about to be destroyed, but meeting people like you, Sister Yinga, before that is Yao's greatest luck in this life. Yinga has been listening silently to Yao in her arms. There is an environmental data table in her sight. The oxygen content and temperature of the air in the fortress city have dropped to a very dangerous threshold. When Yinga first came to the city, the urban area was quite lively, but now the ultra-low temperature outside has made the fortress city look like a dead city. According to the high-level meeting of the fortress held a few days ago, people in the fortress are freezing to death and suffering from frostbite every day. Even if the hospital is operating at full capacity, it cannot alleviate the situation. At the same time, due to the sudden drop in temperature, it has become more and more difficult to go out to collect resources, and Omnics have also strengthened the blockade of the coast. According to statistics, the current energy reserves of the fortress are enough to last for 1 year under normal consumption. It seems that it can still last for a long time. However, the senior officials of the fortress city are worried because when these resources are exhausted, they will have no choice but to waiting to die. Yao, it's not time to despair yet. Sister, I will not let you and other Wuhang people die like this. Yinga raised her hand and stroked Yao's long hair in her arms. Her tone was firmer than ever before, as if she had made a decision. Yao's little head moved when she heard the words, and she looked at Yinga's face. She felt more at ease than ever before, but at the same time, she also felt as if she was about to lose something important. However, as a teenager, she did not take this kind of care too seriously. Feeling taken seriously. Sister, are you telling the truth? It's true, sister, I make a promise to you. Yinga showed a smile, rubbed Yao's hair with her cheek, and then closed her eyes as if feeling Yao's body temperature. After a long time, Yinga raised her head again and looked out the window at Yongye, who didn't know what she was thinking. At the base of the first team of Bastion City Resource Search, Ai Hao closed the door of his office and was about to return to his dormitory to rest, but suddenly he stopped and saw a familiar figure from the corner of his eye. Captain Ai Hao, we have known each other for quite some time. I have something to ask you. Before Ai Hao could say anything, Yinga, who was standing against the wall with her eyes closed, spoke first. Her voice was very calm, without the usual gentleness. Your Excellency Yinga, as long as it does not violate the laws in the fortress, I will be happy to serve you. Ai Hao was not just talking politely, he had great respect for Yinga, an angel who spared no effort to help the Wuhang people. Help me take care of Yao for a while. I have to leave the fortress for something. If I haven't come back after a month, I will leave the child Yao to you from now on. Don't worry, Your Excellency Yinga, I will take good care of the child, but sir, what are you going to do when you suddenly leave the fortress? Do you need our help? Ai Hao was filled with doubts when he heard this. Hearing this tone sounded like he was going to die, so he couldn't help but ask about his birth. To do something that only I can do. When Yinga saw Ai Hao agreeing, a faint smile appeared on her calm face, and then she turned and walked towards the exit. When she was about to enter the corner, Yinga paused, and her voice reached Ai Hao's ears. If there is a chance, I hope we can fight together again in the future. A few days later, on the mountains in the Wuxingxing 54,699 area, a heavily armed Yinga landed on a mountain peak despite the turbulent wind and snow. Holding a gun of judgment in front of her, Yinga's eyes glowed with a faint white light. Through the information storage technology of the Angel civilization, Yinga was burning what she had seen and heard in the past 6 months into the weapon engine. After doing all this, Yinga used the sacred language she learned in the Legion to transform the trial machine in front of her with her own data burned into it into a crude signal generator. It only took Yinga half an hour to do all this, because the preparations had already been done in the fortress city. While Yinga was still looking at the weapon in his hand in a daze, a thick particle beam cut through the night sky and struck, shattering the mountain peak where Yinga was standing with a bang. Sure enough, it appeared. It seems that the existence of the fortress city is indeed tacitly approved by the World Eater God. Otherwise, how could it survive his suppression with that level of resistance? The doubts in Yinga's heart were explained, because the existence of fortress cities was unscientific in Yinga's opinion. The God of World Eaters is such a dangerous existence. Even the guardian angels under the Queen suffered greatly in the confrontation with it, not to mention Wuhang, a post-nuclear civilization that is not even aerospace grade. Not long after leaving the fortress city, Yinga discovered that something was staring at her. After wiping out hundreds of pursuing intelligent fighter jets, Yinga sped up to get rid of the pursuers and arrived at this high mountain area. But it seemed that the enemy had no intention of letting her go, because a series of humanoid omnic weapons covered in silver armor and with flying wings on their backs emerged from the wind and snow. The intelligent AI Wuhan watches Area 54,699 through the surveillance network all over the planet, and the drifting wind and snow cannot interfere with its observation at all. One of the tasks given to it by the World Eater God when it left the Black Star was to destroy the angels lurking on the planet. But before, Yinga had been staying in the city built by the survivors of the Wuhang civilization, and the Wuhang people were deliberately left by the World Eater God to discuss the angel civilization. Due to task conflicts, the intelligent AI Wuhang never found the opportunity to eliminate Yinga. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Seminary Angel Binghua. Author, Shifeng Si Wang. Chapter 497. Boom. The harsh sound of metal collision shook a huge hole in the air filled with wind and snow. Yinga flapped her wings behind her and kept her high speed, drawing an arc in the air and quickly catching up with the flying winged omnic weapon that was trying to get rid of her. Accompanied by the sound of sparks and metal tearing, the two passed each other. Yinga, who was holding the gun of judgment, was unscathed. On the contrary, the flying wing humanoid omnic that she fought with had turned into two pieces and fell to the ground. After Yinga finished all this, he immediately changed direction and rushed behind a mountain peak, and then several laser beams cut through the wind and snow and hit the mountain peak that Yinga used as a shelter. The next moment, accompanied by the violent particle flow that lost the restraint of the force field, the mountain peak turned into scattered earth and rocks and cracked. The flying wing intelligent weapons chasing Yinga didn't stop observing at all, and continued to pursue like a dozen white streams of light passing over the falling earth and rocks. You are really persistent with me. Yinga took the time to glance behind her with the corner of her sight, sighing in her heart. Half an hour had passed since she was discovered by these flying winged intelligent weapons. During this period, the two sides fought more than 100 times, and more than 30 flying wing intelligent weapons have been destroyed by Yinga. However, these flying wing intelligent weapons have not decreased at all, but have become more and more numerous. If things continue like this, Yinga feels that it is very likely that she will not be able to achieve her goal. Yinga no longer held the thought of destroying all these flying winged intelligent machines, and looked directly at the dark clouds high in the sky. The next moment, her body, which was originally flying at low altitude, climbed directly to high altitude, and its speed surpassed that of the flying winged intelligent machines that were chasing behind it. Far behind. In just a few seconds, Yinga had already reached an altitude of 10,000 meters. As the speed became faster and faster, Yinga's wings gradually glowed, and gradually the whole body turned into light. Through continuous acceleration, it eventually turns itself into a pure energy that transcends the basic physical laws of the universe, thereby achieving super light flight in the universe. This is the cornerstone of the angel civilization that can rule a nebula with a population of tens of millions. But just as Yinga rushed into the dark clouds, the energy halo emanating from her body began to weaken rapidly, and Yinga's speed also began to decrease rapidly. How so? Yinga's eyes widened slightly, because the energy that had been accumulated in her body for a long time was rapidly passing away. The dark clouds around her were like countless big mouths devouring the energy that maintained the force field on her body. To make matters worse, the orbital defense facilities deployed all over the planet have also been locked, and dazzling blue particle glows are seen blazing from the horizon, centered on Yinga, who is rushing into the universe. A ball of dazzling flames bloomed in the dark night sky, and Yinga was directly blown away and fell into a depression several kilometers away, creating a trumpet-shaped ravine dozens of meters long. It turns out to be a high-power particle beam weapon, quite powerful. Yinga struggled to get up from the pit, muttering intermittently. Because she was hit by a high-power particle beam just now, her armor and stomach were partially melted and deformed, and she staggered a little. Fortunately, Yinga still had the energy to maintain the force field on her body and was able to withstand the blow just now, otherwise she would definitely lose her ability to fight. But in fact, the situation is not so optimistic. Because of the loss of stellar radiation, Yinga can only rely on the dark energy converted by the gene engine in real time, and cannot quickly mobilize energy to replenish it and recover from the injury. Even the fierce bombardment engraved in the Spear of Judgment is difficult to gather energy in a short time, and can only use the most basic dark energy flames and thermal energy blades. Shortly after Yinga landed, a large number of flying winged omnics followed over like cats smelling fishy smell, more than 50 of them in number. Yinga, who was in a sorry state on the ground, looked around at the flying winged omnics gathered in a circle, and her initially hesitant heart became firm at this moment. Yao, it seems that my sister is unable to fulfill her agreement with you. Following Yinga's inner thoughts, everything around her seemed to slow down. The falling snowflakes and the biting cold wind came to a standstill. Release the safety lock of gene engine energy conversion. Energy circuit limiting valve opens. Warning, the body has entered a state of dark energy overload, and the body is experiencing damage. Please adjust the energy conversion algorithm quickly, otherwise it will affect the stability of the super gene and cause a gene disintegration reaction. Before the warning message of the dark energy calculation method transformed by the subconscious was fully displayed, the window displaying the feedback message was closed. The almost endless dark energy from the dark plane of the universe is transformed into huge dark energy through the genetic engine and escapes from Yinga's body to the outside world. In just a second or two, Yinga's whole body was filled with scorching energy and fire, wrapping Yinga in it like a blazing flame coat. Dark energy overload is a dark energy rampage that only the most elite and powerful warriors among the male angels in the Heavenly Palace Order period can experience. Although the super genes of the female angels have been optimized many times by Angel Hexi, they still cannot withstand the huge effects of dark energy overload on the body. Damage. As a result, there are not many female angels willing to learn and practice this dangerous technology. Only a few warriors who are proficient in energy-driven algorithms can learn it, and Yinga happens to be one of them. Yinga bent her knees slightly, and at the same time folded the wings behind her back downwards to gather strength. With a loud roar and splashing snowflakes, earth, and rocks, Yinga disappeared from the spot. Correspondingly, there was a gap in the surrounding flying winged omnics, and the bodies of several flying winged omnics turned into scattered parts and fell from the sky. Like light piercing the long night, the red stream of light danced in the air, leaving behind countless damaged flying wing omnics along the way. After clearing away the flying winged omnics that might intercept her, Yinga rushed towards the starry sky again. This time, she easily dodged the orbital defense particle cannon. The overflowing Yinga violently tore apart with the spear in her hand. Just after Yinga rushed into the black atmosphere covering the entire planet, the dark atmosphere in the area where Yinga was located began to roll violently. At the same time, the color gradually deepened, and there seemed to be a tendency to shift from the gaseous state to the solid state. Yinga, who is currently in the dark atmosphere, also feels that her energy consumption is gradually increasing as time goes by. She already understands that there is something fishy about the black atmosphere covering the entire planet, but this does not matter to Yinga at this moment. Lifting up the gun of judgment that she had burned with combat data and turned into a locator, Yinga exploded with all the energy at her disposal and threw it out. Looking at the spear of judgment that turned into a bright meteor, penetrated the dark atmosphere and shot straight into the starry sky, Yinga smiled with satisfaction. Her body began to crack, and countless fiery red cracks emerged from her fair skin, like countless lines. The lava tributaries are so sparkling. Queen, this can probably be considered a legendary life. Yinga recalled a scene a long time ago, remembering that it was still the difficult period of the war between male and female angels. What the Queen said when their angel recruits were about to officially join the Heavenly Sword Legion. It is to become a legend and carry forward his name to the entire angelic civilization. As a weakling, he lives silently and waits for the final result. You choose. I remember that I wanted to choose the second path at that time, but under the influence of my good sister Ziluo, I fought in confusion for so long. But now she seems to be able to rest, because Yinga doesn't like fighting, nor does she like fighting. War. If possible, Yinga just wants to live in the manner where her mother lives, and live an ordinary life of talking to her mother every day and watering the flowers when she has nothing to do. But after Yinga followed her good sisters in the war, and wiped out and suppressed all the gangsters who dared to peek into the angelic civilization, Yinga found that she could no longer return to a normal life because she had extra responsibilities on her shoulders. During the more than half a year in Wuheng, Yinga witnessed the fragility of mortals. Of course, she could do nothing and wait for the remaining people of Wuhang's civilization to die out. But the moral concepts from angels and the responsibility as a civilized observer made Yinga's heart waver until she met Yao, an ordinary little girl. After seeing the girl, she had spent several months with him, having an increasingly difficult time surviving due to the changes in her environment. Yinga figured it out. Even if she did nothing, after all the Wuhang people died due to environmental changes, the god of the world eaters would not let this high-ranking person continue to survive. So Yingexuan left the fortress city alone and came to a rolling mountain range. She took the risk and planned to break through the blockade in the sky and contact the Merlot heavenly court, even if it cost her own life in the process. Yinga, whose body was on the verge of fragmentation, began to disintegrate from its wings into scattered energy particles. She ignored the gene engine's warning that her body had reached the critical point and the super gene collapsed. Yinga just closed her eyes quietly and stretched her hands with a smile on her lips to welcome the end she chose. The body that lost its upward momentum fell toward the surface under the influence of the planet's gravity. But the black mist that had become thicker around them stopped drying. They were spinning like a bloody mouth, swallowing up Yinga's still falling body. The gun of judgment, which penetrated the dark atmosphere and entered the starry sky, immediately turned into a signal source and sent out the angel Yinga's request for help to the surrounding star field. A few minutes later, a heavenly sword battleship jumped out of the void, and angel warriors rushed out of the ship. But at the same time, hundreds of flying winged omnics also rushed out of the dark atmosphere of the black star, and at the same time, dense particle beam bombardments came. Just after Tianjian, a search warship, resisted for several minutes, the ship's shield was declared overloaded, and the ship's hull became tattered under the intensive fire bombardment. The accompanying angel warriors also got into hands with the flying winged omnics. The flying winged omnics couldn't withstand a single move from Ying Singer, but they put ordinary angels into crisis. The thermal knives equipped by these flying winged omnics are somewhat similar to the thermal blades of the angel's flame sword, and can cause great damage to a generation of angel warriors. In addition, the number of flying winged omnics was several times that of the angels. In the end, only one of the dozens of angel warriors who came to pursue the signal survived, and the rest all perished. Even the Sky Sword battleship was scrapped in the intensive fire bombing. I have been busy recently, so the update is a bit late, but I don't know how to do it, because writing is my hobby. Due to practical reasons, I have not had the idea of publishing a new book in the past 2 years, so this book will not stop being updated. Super Seminary Angel Binghua. Author, Shifeng Si Wang. Chapter 498. In the mellow heavenly court, after Binghua read the news sent back from Ran, although she was prepared in her heart, she still felt a little regretful. The death of a high-level angel is a big loss for Merlot heaven, let alone an experienced angel warrior like Yinga. Binghua's reply to Angel Ran, who was commanding the battle on the front line, was simple, and the arrogant people who dared to provoke the angel civilization were completely wiped out from the known universe. After dealing with all this, Binghua and Hexi went to the Super Seminary to participate in a very important scientific research conference as a representative of angel civilization. The anti-void god-making project has gone through thousands of years of preliminary preparations and planning by the Super Seminary and the angel civilization. After conquering the important hurdle of the third-generation god body, it has finally taken a big step forward again. Among the 3 major anti-void god-making plans, as the sharpest spear and shield, that is, the axe that can overcome obstacles, the third-generation Kamigawa God of War trial-type super gene has been announced to be produced. The reason why we will be the first to try out the super gene of the third-generation Kamigawa God of War is because we have the living God of War of the ancient Kamigawa civilization in Texas as a template, so the development progress is the fastest. Leaving aside the trial model of the third-generation Kamigawa God of War, in the draft of the anti-void god-making plan, as a spear and shield against the void civilization, the first thing needed is an indestructible body. The supergenetic engineers from the Tiandao Liang star used a very vivid ancient idiom in their civilization to describe it, that is, the King Kong is indestructible. At the meeting, top scientific researchers and senior officials from various god-making civilizations made many optimizations and upgrades to the trial-type Kamigawa god of war gene. Among them, Binghua, as the representative of the angels, provided basic data docking technology, which was of course paid. Some core data of the third-generation Kamigawa god of war will be open to the angels. Hey, Carl, your teacher has been talking about his anti-void god-making plan for thousands of years. What is the purpose of it? I don't believe that it's just to prevent the crisis of Kamigawa's demise from coming to the known universe again. I believe that most civilizations think the same way. Carl, our relationship is so good, tell your sister how I am today. Liang Bing sat on the bench and stared at the college building below, playing with the hair hanging on his side with his fingers, and said casually. Carl, who was also in the Alpine landscape pavilion built inside the academy, was also facing the outside. His peripheral vision had been falling on Liang Bing's bumpy figure and beautiful face on one side. When he heard Liang Bing's words after speaking, he quickly replied. Teacher's wisdom is beyond my reach, and the existence of void civilization is not entirely fictitious. And in order to fight against unknown existences, it is always good to prepare in advance, so that you will not be helpless when the time comes. Liang Bing's mouth curled up slightly. It was obvious that Carl didn't say the main point at all and was completely perfunctory. However, this kid was interesting to him, and he had a very cute and shy personality. He might be able to figure out the words one day. Okay, let's not talk about these far-fetched things. Carl, have you come out with the results of the simulation calculations on space-time genes that I commissioned you to do? And the last mixed gene experiment? Upon hearing this, Carl's face, which was a little tangled because he didn't tell the truth to Liang Bing, immediately became serious and began to answer Liang Bing's words. The results of the simulation calculation on the space-time gene have been produced. Liang Bing, your idea is correct. After the simulation calculation of the large clock, by reducing the various data of the divine body, the difficulty of handling the space wormhole operation can be effectively alleviated. And based on the computing efficiency of the big clock, I believe we will soon be able to find the exact data of the divine body suitable for the space-time gene, and then work together to complete this project. This way we will have time to explore the nature of void together and discover what kind of existence it is. Liang Bing also felt a trace of curiosity about the void as she listened to Carl's constant narration, but Liang Bing was not in a hurry. All her thoughts were now on her own time and space genes. Compared with the emerging concept of void in the super-theological seminary, Liang Bing is more in love with the time and space gene that she has been developing for nearly 10,000 years. No matter how beautiful what Carl says, she will not give up her pursuit of time and space. Okay, Carl, let us discuss your void theory later. How about data analysis from mixed genetic experiments, can they be matched? Carl was not annoyed at all when Liang Bing interrupted him. He stretched out his hand and a projection that looked very similar to a creature from the Kamigawa body appeared in his palm. I don't know where your dangerous genetic data came from, but their properties are very similar to those of the chaos virus. Although they are more stable, they are also very dangerous. I used the permission to use part of the large clock to simulate more than 10,000 mixing experiments, and only one relatively feasible result was achieved. After speaking, Carl threw the model in his hand towards Liang Bing. Liang Bing reached out to catch it and began to read the huge data compressed in the model in his hand. After a while, Liang Bing's eyes with a faint white light returned to normal and he said in wonder. I didn't expect that two completely unrelated things could actually create something like this. It has strong recovery and erosion capabilities, and also takes into account the Angel's air combat capabilities, but its upper limit is a bit low, a bit brittle, and well, a bit ugly. After saying that, Liangbing scattered the models in his hands, smiled, raised his hand and waved to Karl, saying thank you. Seeing this, Karl had a faint smile on his face. Wuxingxing, Surface Joint Command Center. After the local decisive battle a few days ago, Angel and his coalition forces have established a firm foothold on the surface of Area 54,699, and the defense network established based on the mountains has blocked the attacking Omnic troops from the position. At the same time, more and more soldiers from the Union Army are gathering together. Angel Ran plans to wait for enough troops to spread out in all directions and destroy all the Omnic factories on the surface of the Black Star, thereby destroying the war potential of the Omnics. However, Angel Ran also kept a careful eye and did not let the fleet get too close to Wuxingxing, because the opponent was the god of the World Eaters, who had once caused Angel Ming to suffer a big loss. Therefore, Angel Ran was quite cautious, and the fleet was used by her as a trump card, intending to appear at the most critical moment. But before that, a large rescue team had set off, led by Angel Ziluo, intending to give hope to the Wuhan people who were still struggling to support this planet. For some reason, the Omnics on the Black Star ignored the rescue team. It was not until Ziluo led a group of elite coalition forces to their destination that they realized that the Omnics had already set up an ambush here. Covered in ice and snow, the cold and lonely sea fortress city has never been as lively as it is today. The roaring sound from high in the sky broke the tranquility of the city. With the dull and loud sounds of heavy objects falling to the ground, groups of Sakaz Ski-Terrianites and accompanying Ski-Terrii arrived on the ground and filed out of the airdrop compartments to build temporary defensive positions. Quick, move fast. Lord Angel Ziluo is watching us from the sky. We must show the true strength of our Ski-Terrii. A junior commander of the Ski-Terrii Corps wearing an exoskeleton combat uniform gave orders, looking excited and feeling extremely honored to be selected into the rescue team. After the gathered Ski-Terrii dispersed, a tall metal Ski-Terrius knight who was nearly half his body taller than the surrounding Ski-Terrii walked past with heavy steps. Preserve the righteous world and destroy evil heretics. What the Guardian Knights think is very simple. As devout believers in angels, the goals of the angels are their goals, and the enemies of the angels are also their enemies. And the god of world eaters who wantonly destroyed Wuxingxing, a world of righteous order, was an unforgivable evil heretic in their eyes. Although they cannot directly eliminate the heresy and evil that caused all this for the god they believe in, it is the duty of the Guardian Knights to eliminate the minions of the evil heresy. When the remaining Wuhan people who were trapped in the underground base saw the Ski-Terrii and the angels who broke in, they cried with joy and knelt down and cried bitterly, because the angel Yinga who left without saying goodbye did not deceive them. The rescue from the Merlot Heavenly Court. The troops finally arrived. They have been able to maintain a certain order after months of hard work because of the promise made by Angel Yinga when he left. Without this slim hope, I am afraid that the surviving residents of the city will stage a doomsday carnival, and all Wuhan people will attack each other because of scarce food resources, and eventually go to hell together. Although Ziluo has never personally commanded an army in combat, he has a brain with powerful computing power and can arrange what needs to be done in an orderly manner. Almost immediately after arriving in the fortress city, Ziluo ordered the accompanying Skysword series engineering robots to find a safe place to build a temporary stargate. As for the formation of troops, Ziluo handed over this task to the high-level angel Luo who was traveling with him, a high-level angel who was specially transferred to help Ziluo and had rich command experience. There are usually three types of angels. One is like 11 Luo who is good at charging into battle, and the other is a combat angel who can defeat several at the same level. The second type is commanding angels. They are often captains and low-level battlefield commanders in the Angel Legion. They have rich command and combat experience. Although they also have strong combat power, they cannot compete with Ziluo who is specialized in fighting. Compared to angels, the last one is involved in both. It has strong combat ability and good command ability. However, This kind of angel is too rare, and there are only less than 100 in the entire angel civilization. When the underground Wuhang people, with the help of the Sci-fi, came to the surface to gather towards the location of the temporary Stargate, Ziluo, who was standing quietly on a tall building, received information from the 54699 Regional Command Center on the surface of Wuhangzing. On the outskirts of the Sea Fortress City, a large number of Omnic weapon battle groups appeared, including the Flying Wing Omnics highlighted in the battle data of Angel Yinga. It is indeed a trap, but if you want to eat us, it depends on whether your teeth are strong enough. A moment later, the voice of Angel Luo, who was the battlefield commander, sounded on the public channel. Fighters of the Sakaz civilization, the enemy is already on the way. Their number is several times that of ours, but there is nothing to be afraid of, because we angels will advance and retreat with you to annihilate the incoming enemies. Immediately, a large number of cheers from the Sci-fi rang out in the city. Although the Sci-fi knights were silent, the various weapons in their hands that had completed pre-war inspections were the best answer. Guardian Knight Regiment 0586, 13, Team 10, Knight of Ike. Although his whole body was wrapped in thick protective knight armor, Ike did not feel tired because he was a Sarkazi who had passed the test of promotion. In the Sakaz civilization, both men and women will be tested by the church from birth, and if they pass, they will be granted promotion qualifications. This promotion qualification does not give any social or actual preferential treatment to the children. Only when the parents are unable to raise these children who have the promotion qualification, these children will be handed over to the church for care. Of course, this also means that they will be separated from their parents. From now on there will be no contact, and they will follow the path assigned to them by the church. Children who grow up normally and are eligible for promotion will be eligible to participate in the selection of guardian knights once they reach adulthood. If they pass the selection, they will accept the top secrets of Sakaz and advance to the next level with those children raised by the church. Trial. After successfully passing the promotion trial, these children will have strong physiques and strong adaptability beyond the limits of ordinary Sakaz warriors. Then he received 5 years of combat training in various harsh environments from the elite Guardian Knights, and finally received his own personal Guardian Knight armor. At this point, a qualified Guardian Knight was born. Knight Ike, you and Knight Nock assist the Sci-fi in defending Direction 2. Received Captain. After the words fell, Ike and the Sci-fi Knight named Nock walked towards the defensive area they were responsible for. Along the way were the Sci-fi who kept trotting up to their chests. At the same time, there are several four-legged chariots with the ability to adapt to complex terrain and rough appearance. They are the light vehicles of the Sci-fi and one of the heavy fire support equipment of the Sci-fi. Because this was a rescue operation, the large vehicles of the Sci-fi did not accompany them. They only carried four-legged chariots to serve as supporting firepower for the subsequent battle. Arriving at the target location, Ike raised the giant shield in his left hand, and in his right hand he placed a 25mm caliber storm gun on the shield that served as a cover. At this point, a simple fire point was formed. The storm gun is a weapon newly equipped by the Guardian Knights in the past 100 years. Although it is called a gun, it can actually be called a cannon. However, because among the support equipment of the Guardian Knights, there is a storm cannon, so only then did he deign to be named Storm Gun. Ike is also extremely satisfied with the storm gun in his hand. Its powerful penetration ability can easily tear apart any enemy's armor. Coupled with the adjustable shooting mode, this large firearm can be adapted to most combat modes. A few minutes later, dense black spots appeared in the sky, and then dense particle shells fell from the sky, just falling, and then dense explosions sounded one after another, breaking the tranquility of the city covered by ice and snow. But then countless blue fire snakes rushed into the sky from the building complex. The Sakaz people's beloved electromagnetic weapons did not live up to their expectations. The proud maneuverability of the intelligent mechanical aircraft called the fighter aircraft was better than nothing under the bullets fired at supersonic speeds. The armor of the aircraft body was unable to withstand the kinetic energy tearing of large-caliber electromagnetic bullets, turning into scattered metal parts in the air.